Hello, everybody. Welcome to the TriStar Gym channel. Today's episode, we're doing another Ask Me Anything 160. Can you believe we've done 160 of these things? Goodness gracious. Guys, I'm looking for a topic. I didn't see any fights I was super excited about. I looked real quick. What's coming up? Nothing coming up around the horizon. There are some very good fights. Of course, Islam Makhachev, Dustin Poirier. I'm going to do a full analysis once we get closer to that fight. We're still like 8 weeks out, a little over 8 weeks out. So I won't be doing that one right now. However, I will be in Saudi Arabia, guys. I will be in Saudi Arabia for that fight. I'll be there about 2 weeks before. Anybody want to do a seminar? I would love to do a seminar in Saudi Arabia with all my Arab brothers out there. It's going to be my first time in Saudi, actually. So if anybody wants to do a seminar in Saudi Arabia, please call the TriStar Gym in Canada and leave your info and we'll get back to you. Okay, guys, I'm kicking it off. It's an Ask Me Anything. Let's talk about training, fitness, fighting first. Training, fitness, fighting first. And then we'll talk about all sorts of crazy stuff that I know you hooligans out there love to talk about. Real quick, I just released K-Guard, Ultimate K-Guard. Guys, this is a bit of more advanced guard. It's my favorite guard. Of all the guards there are, K-Guard, in my opinion, is the best. It's the best for gi, no gi, and for MMA. I use it all the time. I just released Ultimate K-Guard. This is not a basics video. It's not an advanced basics video, but it is a killer instructional. Check it out on jujiclub.com. Make sure to use the promo code LEVELUP50 off. It's on the bottom of your screen. It's in the description. Don't forget to put in that code, because if you do, it's done. Use LEVELUP50 off and get 50% off anything you want on Juji Club. We have striking videos, wrestling videos, jiu-jitsu videos, of course. It's all there. Enjoy, guys. All right, guys, let's get started. Let's start with the craziness. We're talking about fighting, jiu-jitsu, MMA. Bilal for the belt in Manchester. What are the odds? That's from Kareem. I will be there as well. And I will tell you that is a great fight. I'm very happy to see Bilal Muhammad in the title fight. This is going to be crazy tough. I got to go through their footage. Of course, I know both fighters well, but that's not the way I don't just do it off the top of my head. Okay, I really got to go bite down on the footage and see the different styles, how they're going to match up. Guys, I've watched Bilal Muhammad fight since he was in Titan FC. You know, I remember seeing him fighting Titan FC, and I was like, man, this guy's really good. I think he can go super far. And his nickname is Remember the Name. So he's giving you a promise. Remember the name, Bilal Muhammad. And let me tell you something. I was really impressed with him when he was in Titan FC. I commentated his fights in Titan FC, maybe 3 or 4 of them. And look at this. It's true. He's fighting for a title fight. Do remember the name. I can't wait to see it. Can you talk about CTE? Namfam has it bad. Namfam. Let's look that name up real quick. I know that name. Namfam. Why would you say he has it bad? 1 second. So, yeah, I remember Namfam. He doesn't have it bad. Don't tell me he has it bad. Lost by guillotine, submission. He lost by TKO punches in 2014. Nah, he doesn't have CTE. You're just trolling here. Come on. What else we got here? Topic: kettlebell for fitness. Kettlebell for fitness is an amazing tool. It's amazing. I love kettlebells. Why? They take such little space and you could do so much with them. You could work explosiveness. You could work endurance. You can build muscle. You can incorporate sprinting. I like sometimes taking the kettlebell to the park. I sprint. I do kettlebell workout. It's such an amazing tool. However, it's not the only tool. I think it's an amazing tool, especially for martial artists. Especially, we have lots of kettlebells in TriStar Gym. I use them on a regular basis. What I love about kettlebells, you could also do carry workouts. So I'll do sprints, snatches, then I'll carry the kettlebell. It's amazing for abs, back, shoulders. It's such an amazing tool. Make sure to get Strong and Stable Kettlebell video. I have it on jujiclub.com. It's an amazing tool, but you have to use the kettlebell in a precise manner. I've seen so many people come in the gym and grab a kettlebell, and I'm telling you, less than 1% know how to use a kettlebell. It's a precise tool. You have to use it correctly, or you won't get the benefits. It's amazing to me how guys work with kettlebell all the time, and they don't even know how to hold the kettlebell. It's insane. It's not super complicated. It takes about 2-3 weeks to learn the drills, okay? But they're really important. Turkish get up, snatch, front squats. I love drop snatch into a lunge. I think it's an amazing exercise. Lunge matrix. It's such a great tool, especially for combat athletes. Don't underestimate it. If you had a kettlebell and a pull-up bar, I think you can build a world-class athlete. Kettlebell, pull-up bar, and a place to sprint. Oh, you can develop a world-class athlete with a minimal amount of equipment. Okay, guys, what else? Is Matteo Montanabe the founder of Nordani Jiu-Jitsu? Okay, I have no idea who that is, so I'm going to have to pass on that. I'm sorry. Okay, I got a super chat here. I'm always doing a mixture of super chat and non-super chats. Hi, Coach. For us, when GSP returned to face Bisping, Anderson Silva was still active. Was there any talk of that being GSP's return fight during negotiations? God bless. That's from Mike L., a gentleman and a scholar. Thank you very much, Mike L. Guys, there was so much talk about Anderson Silva versus GSP. Anderson Silva versus GSP. We couldn't get everybody to agree. It was just a complicated thing. Now, the Bisping fight, I remember Luke Rockhold wanted the Bisping fight, and he won a fight. I can't remember who he beat. He had beaten somebody. Let me look it up, okay? Oh, hold on a second. I'm just going to go back. This happened, I mean, it's so long ago. Luke Rockhold, which Luke Rockhold just won, actually, in Karate Combat, by the way. He won by KO. Congratulations to him. Good to see him winning his fight. He fought Joe Schilling, a very tough opponent. Okay, Luke Rockhold just beat Joe Schilling last Saturday, and I saw the highlights. He looked like very, very sharp. Let's see here. Michael Bisping. Okay, he had beat Chris Weidman. Then he fought. Hold on a second. He beat Michael Bisping. I remember this was in 2014. He kind of just steamrolled Bisping. Okay, he steamrolled Bisping in 2024. Then he beats Lyoto Machida. Okay, he finishes Lyoto Machida with the rear naked choke. Then he beats Chris Weidman. That was a mega fight. Aldo versus McGregor. I think they were the co-main event. I was there. Weidman started off strong. It was a seesaw battle, but then Luke Rockhold kind of took over, and he won. Then he fights Michael Bisping. Michael Bisping, a major underdog. I remember Michael Bisping was supposed to actually come work with us because he was in Montreal shooting a movie. He was supposed to come train with us. Then he got a very short notice. He had 2 weeks to prepare for Rockhold, make the weight. He makes the weight, gets in there, and knocks out Rockhold in the first. A huge upset, a rocky story. Michael Bisping is now the champ. Chris Weidman, Luke Rockhold then goes on to fight David Branch. I was there as well. I was there in the arena. I can't remember who was fighting from TriStar, but he beats David Branch. Guys, I was there. You know what? I remember I was there because I remember David Branch walking up to me, tapping me on the shoulder in the locker room, saying, "Hey, coach, do you know how to tie a Muay Thai cup?" I'm like, "Of course I do," because all his coaches didn't know how to tie on a Muay Thai cup. A Muay Thai cup is like a steel cup. It's really robust, but it comes with strings, and you got to know how to tie it on. So I'm like, "Of course." And he was just like in a rush because he warmed up, but he didn't have his cup on, and nobody knew how to tape it on. So I knotted it up. I taped it up. Anyways, David Branch, longtime training partner from Henzo Gracie Academy. We both trained under John. We're both black belts under John. Great guy. He was double champ in what division? I think it was cage fighting championship. I can't remember. Fights Rockhold, lost 2 strikes in round 2. And I remember after that fight, it was, if I remember correctly, it was that fight. Luke Rockhold takes the mic and he's like, "Hey, I want to fight Bisping again. George St. Pierre, don't you dare come up to this division," because there was talk about George St. Pierre stepping in to fight Bisping. And he's like, "If you come in this weight class, you're just going to get embarrassed." And I remember because I was there, I was offended. I was like, "Oh, man, that's so, like, why don't you just challenge George? Maybe we have to fight each other in title elimination." He was completely dismissing George, saying, "Hey, if you come in this division, you're going to get flattened." We all know what happened. George ended up winning. Then after that, Rockhold had to fight Yoel Romero. He gets one of the worst KOs I've ever seen. Yoel Romero completely KOs him. Then Blachowicz KOs him. Another horrible KO. So now we have Rockhold getting knocked out 2 times in a row, but really, really bad. I remember after the Blachowicz knockout, I was there as well. Dana White was like, "I want him to retire." He got knocked out back-to-back horrifically. And everybody was like, "This guy needs to, be careful for his health." Dana White wanted him to retire. No, he comes back, loses to Paulo Costa, unanimous decision, loses to Mike Perry in bare knuckle boxing, and now he comes back in the winning circle. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 losses in a row. Very tough turnaround for Rockhold. But now he's back in the winner's circles with a KO finish in the 3rd round in Karate Combat. Congratulations to him. But it's such a crazy time because everybody wanted to do the double champ thing, right? McGregor had done it. Then it opened the way. DC, everybody started believing, hey, we got to be double champ. We can't let McGregor be the only double champ. So we got to win 2 weight divisions. It became like a 4-minute mile type thing. Nobody could do 4-minute miles. Some people were saying it's impossible. All of a sudden, one guy does it. Months later, everybody's doing it. Everybody's hitting a 4-minute mile. It just made people believe. It was an incredible time. Now somebody becomes double champ. It's going to be great. It's going to be epic. You won 2 divisions. Pereira just did it, of course. But it's not the same thing as the first guy when he done it. And maybe Pereira will be the first 3-division champ. It's not out of the realm of possibility. All right, guys, I'm going to do another super chat and then some non-super chats as well. How will Islam deal with Poirier's boxing? I believe it's the highest level in UFC. That's from Mike P. Mike P, I agree with you. Poirier's boxing is really, really good. It's among the best in UFC for pound. However, I think and you guys are going to call me crazy, I think the punching power goes to Islam Makhachev. Not the boxing technique, not the volume, not the precision, not the counter punching, but the power. I know everybody's going to call me crazy. I get it. I'm not worried about that. But the punching power, I'm going to give it to Islam Makhachev. He's a freak athlete with the takedowns. That's how he's going to beat him. He's going to take him down over and over again. He's going to fatigue him. He's going to take him down. And on the ground, guys, there are different levels. I think Islam Makhachev's ground game is just way too much. And if I was Poirier's coach, I would tell him, don't you dare try a guillotine. Don't you dare. Don't do the guillotine. The guillotine's just getting you in more trouble than anything else. He doesn't have the guillotine to put away a Makhachev, in my opinion. If he could correct his guillotine over time, it's possible, yes. However, there's a lot of work to be done, and I don't think he could pull it off necessarily. It's a very difficult thing to do, to guillotine such a highly experienced grappler. Now, if you're the guy with more experience, it makes sense to guillotine. Like, for instance, if you're fighting a wrestler, but your guillotine, you have so much jiu-jitsu experience, it rivals his wrestling experience, yes, you can guillotine him. But I feel that the grappling experience is way on, because people think, should you guillotine, should you not guillotine? It all depends. Are you the guy with the more experience? Are you the better grappler? If you're the better grappler, by all means, you do the guillotine. If you're not the better grappler, do not do the guillotine. If it's comparable, you may get the guillotine, you may not. So I would recommend he doesn't do the guillotine. Okay, guys, non-super chat. Can Ankalev potentially beat Pereira? That's from Marcus Raul. Yes. However, I'd like to go through his footage. I'd like to see how good his takedowns are. Off the top of my head, I'm not remembering, because I saw his fight against Johnny Walker, and what other fight that I watched? It was more of a striking affair. I think it was Blachowicz. I want to see his wrestling. Because I still think that's a major concern in the Pereira. Especially as Pereira's fighting in heavier weights. These guys can muscle him to the ground, and they can punish him. So I'd have to review his tapes. Thoughts on how to balance weightlifting and MMA training? That's from Rooftop. Rooftop, I give a really detailed answer in Strong and Stable Knees for Life, guys. That is one of the best, most important videos. I'm so sick of seeing people break their knees, but I'll tell you something. I like to do it after training. So if you're doing combat sport, after boxing, after wrestling, especially if you're doing a grappling art, don't lift weights before the grappling art, because your muscles are temporarily fatigued, so you have less safety. Don't exhaust yourself with weights, stability training, ab training, sprints, and then go wrestle. No, because your muscles need to recover. Now, when you're going live, you're less stable. You pop your knee, you pop your back, you injure yourself, okay? You should warm up with technique, roll live, do your rounds, etc. Then, okay, you're a little bit tired, no problem. But when you do your squats, when you do your bench, when you do your kettlebell, when you do your sprints, it's a controlled environment. So it's okay that you're a little bit tired. It's actually good. You're going to dig a little further. Okay, so I like conditioning after martial arts training. That's the way me and George always done it. And we have very, very low injury rate, extremely low injury rate. For the amount of years in training, guys, I'm 44 years old. I know guys who train 5 years, they're all broken up. They can't barely train. It's like, dude, you're not training right. That's the truth. You're just not training correctly. There is a method. There is a science to the madness. Train. If you're training in the grappling arts, you must do your conditioning afterwards. Okay, so every day you got to do something. You're either doing strength, or you're doing cardio, or you're doing power. Those are the three main, okay? And the way I design it in Strong and Stable Knees is on the 3rd or 4th week, when your body's a bit run down, you do stability training. I like stability training as like the lighter week. Because don't forget, guys, you cannot hammer your body every week for 52 weeks out of the year. It doesn't work that way. Think about it like this. You got to train hard for 3 weeks, and your 4th week, you got to ease off. Okay, so if you're used to doing 5 rounds of 6-7 minutes, you do that for 3 weeks. Great. The 4th week, pull back a little. Do 2 rounds, take a break. Do another round, take a break. Do your conditioning, but do a little less. Give your body time to recover. For you guys who are natural athletes, and I've been a natural athlete my entire life, you must respect the body's need for a lighter week. You have to cycle off. You can't just hammer the body every day and expect it to adapt. Eventually, your body will become desensitized. Okay, so sometimes the best thing you can do is give your body a break. You know how many times I've seen a guy get injured and have to take a break, and then when he's back on the mat, he's looking better than ever. He's looking better. Oh, he couldn't train for, I don't know, 12, 15 days because he had an injury, and then he gets back to training, and oh wow, he has the best practice he's ever had in a long time. And it's like, yeah, because his body's rested. You have to respect the body's need for repair. That's why we got to ease off the gas every 3 or 4 weeks. Okay? And there's a lot of science behind this, guys. There's a lot of science. Okay? For us, you got to watch Baki. That's from MMA. Baki, I don't know who that is. I don't know who Baki is. Let me look up Baki. You crazy guys on your Baki. What is Baki? Watch Baki Netflix. What the? Is that like Japanimation? Baki the Grappler. You guys are nuts. Let me look this up. Baki the Grappler. Let me look on YouTube. Baki the Grappler. You crazy guys in your animation. Look at this. Hold on, I'm gonna put this up on screen. Hold on a second. Let's see if my button pushing skills. Hold on a second. Let's see if I can do this. Where's Baki? It's hilarious. You guys watch cartoons. It's amazing. All right, I gotta erase this. Let me see if I can get Baki the Grappler on this so we can all have a good laugh. Don't say I'm not open-minded. Baki the Grappler. Where the hell are you? Oh, here it is. Here it is. The button pushing skills. Look at this. Next time I'll prep this in advance. Uh-oh. What did I do? Damn it. All right, guys. Let me see if I can. Damn it. Okay, guys. I'm up. Aha. Aha. Button pushing extraordinaire, my friends. You guys don't respect my button pushing skills. That's the problem with you guys. You underestimate my button pushing skills, and I come here and I button push all around. I button push circles around you guys. Look at this. Oh, I figured it out. Can you believe it? Button pushing extraordinaire. Oops. Hold on a second. All right, here we go. Let's see. Let's watch Baki the Grappler. This is going to be hilarious. I can't believe you guys watch cartoons. It's incredible. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead. All right, here we go. Okay, I gotta skip ahead a little. I'm gonna skip ahead.
You can whine all you like, but the crowd saw what happened out there. That white belt kicked your sorry butt. What about the Shinshinkai reputation? Every win was on the first point. Well, what do you have to say for yourself?
But, Coach,
Now that's a true coach.
What about our undefeated record built on my sweat and blood?
I've heard enough crap built on your sweat and blood. Ooh, you've never even fought against other styles.
So Suedo?
So who have you ever beaten? You think you could beat that kid, huh?
Oh, I just hope you figured out how
This is hilarious, guys. I gotta say, it's not my cup of tea, but I'll watch it later just for fun. I'll try to get into it, but I find it ridiculous, kind of. I don't know if I can get into it. I've seen Japanimation before. Not really my favorite type of show, but I'll give it a chance. That was kind of all right. I think I could learn some coaching tips from that guy. Just get in there and kind of beat up your students and tell them off when they don't win. It's not a bad idea. Okay, thoughts on balance weight? Okay, we did that. Arnold Allen fighting Manchester as well. Yes, he is. I do believe so. What helps to prevent staph infection? MMA guy, rash guard. Okay, rash guard, guys. Wear rash guards and shower after practice. It's that simple. I'm not a big believer in the soaps. I don't think they make a big difference. I'm not against them or anything like that, but I think the biggest thing is rash guard. And of course, don't train if you have an open wound. If you have a scratch on your body, like wrap it up, protect yourself. But definitely rash guard and shower after practice. The more you cover your body in practice, the less chance you have of getting any kind of staph or ringworm. Of course, mopping the mats. Mopping the mats is crucial. That goes without saying. But you have to have a strict mopping the mats after every practice policy. In the K-Guard instructional, do you show a Choi bar option too? Question mark. That's from Muhammadan. Yes, I do. I don't call it Choi bar. I call it Miki Galvar bar or the Galvar bar. Sometimes I'll refer to it as Choi bar too, but I find like the guy who did it at the highest level, who used it successfully, it should be named after him. And to be that guy's Mika Galvao, he used it at the highest level. He started the trend. He started the whole wave of that armbar. It works fantastic. It's such an important and powerful armbar. It really is, and absolutely love it. And I do show it in K-Guard because when you're in K-Guard and you reach for the leg, the guys cross-face you, it's time to reverse armbar, Choi bar, as you say, or Galvar armbar, and rip up that arm. Well, if they rip that arm out, of course, you go back to the leg, right? So you're creating a dilemma. It's a fantastic element to K-Guard. Does the adrenaline dump as an amateur fighter ever go away? That's from NAJ. Yes, absolutely. Okay, that's a lot of emotion. It's a lot about emotion, adrenaline dump. You hyped yourself up. So definitely does happen as you mature as a fighter, and you don't buy into the hype as much. You don't freak out as much. And also, if you're in good shape, because people think adrenaline dump. No. Sometimes you're just not in good shape. Okay, but sometimes, if you are in good shape and you get tired, it can be adrenaline dump. I do believe that because people get so nervous. And when people are nervous, their heart rate goes up, their stress levels goes up, they tighten up. Instead of being loose, they tighten up. So they're kind of like, It's kind of like pushing the gas and the brake on your car at the same time. I think like when you're nervous, that's what happens. You're trying to fight, but you're also tense. You're not relaxing. There's some muscles that need to flex and some that need to relax. And if you're turning on all the muscles at once because you want to get the job done by just freaking out, it doesn't help. Have you seen Connor's movie? That's from JB19. Guys, I would never watch that movie. I would never watch that movie. I don't know. It just doesn't appeal to me at all. Like, it's just not. I know maybe it's going to be a big blockbuster movie, but for me, that's just a ridiculous movie. Like, I would never sit down for an hour and a half and watch that. Like, it's not something I wouldn't enjoy it. And, I'm not the biggest Conor McGregor fan. And I got to tell you, like, it's just not my kind of movie. How do you sprint with a kettlebell? No, you don't sprint with a kettlebell. So you'll run, let's say 400 meters, then do 10 snatches. Okay, so you don't sprint with the kettlebell. You incorporate sprinting and kettlebell together. Because in my opinion, the best exercise is sprinting. Sprinting on track, treadmill, or sprinting on an air bike, or rowing. Those are the best exercises, okay? Now, I also like incorporating the heavy bag as cardio. I think that's amazing. Why? Because you're learning how to punch also. So bag work is crazy cardio, especially if you know how to incorporate Dutch drills and stuff like that. You can create a crazy amount of cardiovascular output. I also like med ball tossing. So if you go up to a wall and you throw med balls, you could bring your heart rate super, super high. You're working abs, you're working a plyometric, it's working entire body, it's legs, it's incredible. So these are my favorite ways to develop cardio. I showed the med ball toss in Strong and Stable Knees. It's a phenomenal way to generate power as a combat athlete. And it's incredible for building legs that are sturdy. Because don't forget, guys, to have strong and healthy knees, you need to have great endurance, great power, great strength, and incredible stability. All these things are important because in a fight, if you lack stability, kiss your knees goodbye. In training, if you lack power, kiss your knees goodbye. If you lack strength, kiss your knees goodbye. If you fatigue, most people get injured when they're fatigued. Boom, kiss your knees goodbye. Okay. Now you'll notice I didn't say flexibility. Here's the thing, it's gonna be a bit controversial. I'm not a big believer in flexibility, and I'll tell you why. Just give me a second before you guys blow up on me, because every time I talk about this, people freak out. I think you should have adequate flexibility, and that's it. Don't go further. And don't confuse flexibility with mobility. I think mobility is very important, but flexibility is not so important. Okay? Now, I had the privilege to work with a man named Stuart McGill. I've talked about this channel in the past. He's a phenomenal thinker, trainer, and he's an expert in the back. He's the number one. I would tell you he's the number one authority on back. Yeah, he's taken over 10,000. He studied over 10,000 scans on athletes, doing all sorts of maneuvers. Okay, he came to study George's back. He's done everybody. Okay, he's done all the who's who in the sports, and his findings are incredible. And he says, listen to this man. Okay, this man Stuart McGill is a brilliant man. He's written many books. He's a genius. He talks about if he sees your spine, he has an MRI of your spine, he could tell you how successful you're going to be in whatever sport. He told me, of all the golfers, we're sitting down and talking. I was asking him, how come a linebacker can't hit further than a golfer? Explain that to me. And he was, of course, bringing it down to the spine. It's all about the spine. I'm like, he's like, a golfer's spine is thinner than a linebacker's spine. If you're going to see linebackers have very thick, robust spines. They don't contort the same way as a thinner spine. So, think about a figure skater. When a figure skater is twirling on the ice, the closer they bring their hands to their body, the faster they start spinning. The closer they bring their hands to their body, the faster they start spinning. The smaller the radius, the more you can torque. Makes sense. So he looks at your spine and he says, like, the spine is an indicator of what sport you should go into. Now, I found that fascinating. And he told me something else. He was telling me, look, did you notice how GSP is a bit stiff? He's like, yeah. I say, yeah, I noticed that. Even though he does a lot of martial, he says that stiffness, he got it from doing years of track and field. He's a big believer, Stuart McGill, in training to be stiff, not flexible. Can you believe that? We're always taught flexibility. He's like, no, flexibility is actually bad. He says your tissues can fatigue. If you overstretch them, they can fatigue. Now, I'll tell you something. When he told me that, I was blowing my mind. I'll tell you why. Because at that time, I was training with guys who were very into yoga. A guy who was a black belt and very into yoga. Very, very into yoga. And I would always overpower that guy. He would do conditioning, but lots of yoga. He was like a yoga freak. He would go to retreats where he'd do 7 days of yoga, and he would do yoga every day. Every day he would do yoga, but he would even go on retreats, vacations that are just specialized yoga sessions and 2 times a day. And you're doing all this yoga stuff. And I noticed that when we'd wrestle, I'd always overpower him. Always. The guy was super technical, super good. He even made it he made it far in his career. I don't want to say who he is. But whenever we'd mix it up, I feel like he was a good wrestler, he was a good grappler, he was a good striker. But as we kept fighting, eventually I would overpower him. And I realized I think it had a lot to do with yoga. Because I remember I would pin him, and I remember his joints would flex, and it was a burden. It was a burden because I couldn't pass his guard easily. He was flexible. It helped him in a way. But as soon as I got past that difficulty, I could overpower him. As soon as I got into a good position, he couldn't create space. He couldn't explode to his knees. Every time he would try, I would just overpower him, pin him back down. Once I got past through the flexibility of his legs, I would just crush him. And I realized what Stuart McGill was telling me is true. Because he was telling me, look, this is his example, okay? And he says, look, take a credit card and kind of bend it in half and keep bending it in half. And you see at one point it's going to get fatigued and it's going to be easier and easier to bend. That's what you could do to your tissues, your tendons and muscles. You could force them, you could fatigue them over time with stretching. Of course, you don't want to stretch your tendons, but you can stretch. You got to stretch some tendons. And he says you could fatigue them. He goes, what you want is stiffness. If you want power, you shouldn't try to work too much flexibility. And since then, I can tell you something. I've had less injury. I know it's going to be very controversial. And I don't want to mix mobility. I believe mobility is good. Yes, mobility is very important. We're going to talk about that in a sec. But stretching too much is not great. I don't think it is. I agree with Stuart McGill. I know we're going to have a difference of opinion because you guys are going to tell me, look at this guy, he's super flexible and he's super strong. Yes, you can be flexible and strong. However, that guy would be even stronger if he didn't do so much flexibility. That's my opinion. Okay. Now, there is a guy out there, which I respect very much, Michael Kogan, and he completely disagrees with that. He thinks you should be strong and flexible, and the two go hand in hand, and he doesn't buy into the fatigue tissue philosophy. I do. In my personal experience, I think that Stuart McGill is correct. You want stiff hamstrings, Stuart McGill says. You don't want them too stiff, and you don't want them too flexible. You want the right amount of stiffness, because if they're too stiff, you're going to be in pain all the time. Now, he also correlates hyperflexibility with pain. He says the most injured backs I've ever studied are the most flexible backs. That's what he says. If you get too hyper strong, like powerlifters have the worst backs, so the guys who go too much towards their maximal strength, and those who have too much of a flexible back, he goes, over the years, they have the most injuries. Guys, give me 1 second here, please.
Since this recent bit
1 second here. We have a Bitcoin. Second. One moment, gentlemen. I just have to do this here. Okay. All right. So, guys, mobility. Let me just talk about mobility. Okay, look at your joints. Okay, the first joint is your ankle. Let's say. Okay, of course you have toes. Let's skip that for now. Your first major joint is ankle. Your ankle has to be stable or mobile. Which one? Your ankle has to be mobile. If your ankle is not mobile, you can't squat, you can't jump, you can't kick, you can't do anything as good. Okay, so the ankle has to be trained for mobility. The next joint up is stability. You don't want flexible knees. Nobody stretches their knees, okay? it's not meant to be, we're not trying to develop mobility, we're trying to develop stability. So the first joint is mobility, the next joint is stability. Okay, so we start with the ankle. We said mobility. After that, it's knees. They have to be stable. Nobody tries to bend their knees. Okay, bending your knees is really bad. You can injure yourself. Okay, it's all about building stability in the knee. Then the joint above that is the hip. The hip is mobility. Remember, it goes mobile, stable, all the way up the chain. So we start mobile. Ankles have to be mobile. Hips, stable. After the hips, I skipped the knees. Mobile. Ankles, mobile. Knees, stable. And up is the hips. The hips have to be mobile. Then after the hips, it's the lower back. The lower back has to be stable. You don't want a hyperflexible lower back. After a stable back, the joint up, the next major joint is our thoracic spine. That has to be mobile. Okay, that's why we do thoracic spine exercises. Okay, very important mobility there. After that, it's the neck. The neck has to be stable. You don't need hyper stretching of the neck. You do not need hyper stretching. No stretching of the neck. We have to create a stable neck. So it goes mobile, stable, all the way up the chain. Mobility is very important. Now there's a normal amount of mobility you should have, and after that, don't go beyond that. In my opinion, you should not go beyond that. What can increase punching power? That's from Try Hard. Abs, plyometrics. Look, there's so much, okay, but abs. Most people, they don't hit hard because they have bad abs, okay? Because think about this for a second, okay? Imagine this. Just do a thought experiment. Imagine you're built the way you are, and I just switched your core out. I take your core, okay, so the whole space between your chest bone and all the way down past your hips, okay? Just above your thigh. That's your core. Imagine I swap that out for a sponge. Okay, just do a thought experiment. Now your core is a sponge. Okay, it's really flimsy, it's weak. And I tell you, hey, take this baseball and throw it. Well, when you go to wind up and throw it, your body's going to bend in half. And then when you release it, it's going to bend back the other way. And it's like, whoa, you're going to lose all this stability and you're going to be bopping back and forth. And I'd be like, man, I can't do anything. Now I'm like, okay, kick the soccer ball. You're going to run up to the soccer ball. As you wind up to kick it, your body's going to be bouncing back left and right. You're going to lose stability. You're going to fall on the ground. You're not lined up. You can never generate power. I tell you, okay, look, jump and dunk this basketball, okay? You grab the basketball in your hand. You run up to the hoop. You load yourself. You go down. You jump. As you jump up, your upper body delays. So your legs go up and your upper body's still hanging down. And by the time it goes up, it's like you're all off balance. You can't whip your body upwards. You're like, wow, man, I can't do any of these movements you're asking me to do. I didn't even ask you to throw somebody yet. Imagine I ask you, hey, double leg this guy. As soon as you get in the legs, your sponge is going to bend in half. Double legging would be impossible. Now, let's think of fighter B now. Fighter B has a core of stone. I swap it out for a stone, let's say. Now, forget about the weight. It's just stiff as a stone. It's stiff. Okay, this is a thought experiment. Take out all the literacy. It's not a literal thought experiment. Okay, it's just like, imagine the guy's core is like stone. When he throws a baseball, his legs transfer power through a rock hard abdomen. It's granite. He throws it. That power is going to transfer to the upper body. You're transferring power from the lower body to the upper body. You get the idea. Now, when you run, jump, when you kick, when you punch, everything is sturdy. Now, I'll tell you something. They do slow motion studies of athletes, and the core is almost always the weakest link. So your legs are strong, your upper body's strong, but if the core cannot connect the two, the lower and upper half of your body, you're going to bleed power. And that's where people bleed power. Now, in Strong and Stable Back, I teach you how to work your core. It could be called Strong and Stable Core. One day I'm going to do a whole thing on the core. Core is so important. But in the video Strong and Stable Back, I cover the core, because you could not have a healthy back without an incredible core. I show some very incredible core exercises. Core is not necessarily abs, but it's definitely part of abs. And one of my favorite exercises is the headstand back extension. That's in Strong and Stable Neck. I love this exercise. It's a neck exercise, and I was just doing it yesterday. It's a neck exercise and an ab exercise. It's incredible for abs. It's incredible for abs, but it's also a headstand So you're standing on your head. You're getting a strong neck. It hits two birds with one stone. It's so important. Core training is so important. If you don't do core training, you won't be as powerful, and eventually you will hurt your back. Okay, guys, I'm sure I missed a few super chats. Let me rewind here. Okay, guys, we're 41 minutes in. Oh, boy, I missed a bunch of super chats. Guys, I'm just going to bang these out, and then we're going to go back to a mixture of super chat and non-super chats. Hey, Coach, do you think Alex stepped in on Jamal's Hill's foot on purpose before landing the left hook, or just an accident because of opposite stances? That's from Nitro. I think it's just an accident, even though it is a legitimate technique, but it works a lot better with shoes. If I step on your foot with a shoe on, let's say we're boxing, it makes a big difference. Okay, that shoe's pinned, and also we use it in wrestling. However, barefoot, I find it's not that big of a deal. It can be early in a fight. It was early in the fight. The feet is dry. But in open stance, we do it all the time by accident. I don't think he was aiming for the foot. I think people are making a bit of a big deal out of it because you don't see that much in Muay Thai. Because why? It's barefoot. It's not that much grip. But it can be if early in the fight and we're dry. It can be. It's just not as utilized as it is in wrestling and boxing. Which is, it's illegal to do it in boxing, but people do it all the time. Hey, Coach, wanted to say thank you for making my jiu-jitsu and life so much better. Please do AMAs more often. We love your content. That's from AON Twist. AON Twist, you're a gentleman and a scholar. Thank you so much. That's very, very kind of you. You mentioned you have friends that are black belts in investing. As a young man, where would I go to find guys like this and get financial mentorship from them besides reading financial books? That's from Relentless. Well, those are friends I've had in life, like I would say, my brother, my older brother is really, he's a very seasoned investor. He knows what he's doing. So I take advice from him. And in my gym, I'm very lucky to have very successful people around me, and they kind of give me their ideas. And, after training, sometimes we sit down and we talk about the market, what's going on, how can we, where can we invest money and stuff like that. So it's really just friends and contacts that I've met over the years, outside of books. But I do read business books. I'm fascinated. Because for me, it's just like, it's like any other skill, right? Finance is just like any other skill. Like people study business, and my favorite education, the best education you can ever get, and I tell this to my kids all the time, is just watch every season of Shark Tank. It's inspiring because you see these people come up with the most brilliant inventions. And it comes down to a product or service. At the end of the day, making money is two things. It's product or service. If anybody ever finds a third one, please let me know. But in philosophy, we talk about Aristotle talks about markets, finance, currency. He philosophizes about money. It's actually quite interesting. And of course, we have to read Karl Marx. We have to read Adam Smith. Karl Marx, the father of communism. Adam Smith, the father of capitalism. These two guys changed the world. These two thinkers changed the world. We study their philosophies, of course. Karl Marx, you cannot graduate in philosophy without hearing Karl Marx. Even though he's an economist, he set a world on fire with the philosophy. He set the world on fire. Karl Marx thinks the workers in the factory are just as important as the entrepreneur, the guy who created the factory. They think the laborer should get the money just as much as the guy who invented the company, who founded the company. Now, of course, Adam Smith will tell you that's crazy. Two guys with opposing views changed the world. Now, I lean on the side of capitalism, okay? Because I think it breeds innovation, it breeds competition, but I do see also there's a dark side to capitalism. I'm not crazy. I think there's a balance. I think we need to have a conscious type of capitalism. I think there is a balance to be observed, but I'm definitely much more leaning on the capitalist side, free market. But with that said, try to find a mentor online. I'm not a big believer. I think a lot of those guys are just con artists, so be careful, but definitely read books. And there's a lot of podcasts on finances. I think you can find a voice that you feel makes sense, is not trying to ask you for money, is just kind of talking about money, because experts are talking about money all the time, right? And they're doing it publicly. There's nothing to hide. So if they're asking you for money, you got to ask yourself, why does this guy want my money? I thought he was a money genius. Why does he want my money? Isn't he like investing his money in the market? Didn't he have a product or service that he released onto the market? Isn't he some kind of genius? Doesn't he offer me something? All he's doing is offering you advice. That's a bit tricky. I love Shark Tank though. Like, they're true stories, they're real stories, and then you see the sharks. They're always asking the same questions, and you see the pattern. You get these guys who are great entrepreneurs, and you get these guys who are like beginner entrepreneurs. You can tell it's such an education. The Shark Tank show is such an education, and it's quite entertaining at the same time. What are the best percentage judo throws to learn for MMA and jiu-jitsu? ? That's from Rod Go Huber. Uchimata I love. Kosotogake. Foot sweeps. So all the ashiwaza, I should say. I would tell you Uchimata is really good. I love it defensively when people shoot in my legs or try to body lock me. I love Uchimata because it protects me. Offensively, I like Kosotogake. I like body lock throws. I like hip toss, ukigoki, ukigoki. So not ukigoshi, excuse me, ukigoshi. So one hip toss, like a hip toss with one hip, not two hips in. I'm not a big osotogari guy, so I know it's very popular, but I like uchigari, inside trip. So those are my favorite. And of course, sasai. I love sasai, the foot sweep. Akira Toriyama passed away recently, and it's insane how much influence Dragon Ball had on bodybuilders and MMA fighters. Mike Perry, Max Holloway, and Ronda Rousey. That's from Hassan Haytham. Well, Hassan, I gotta tell you, I never got into Dragon Ball, but I've seen it obviously when I was growing up. It does look interesting. It looked cool. Like, I watched very, very little of it, but it was definitely, you heard about it all the time. I just personally wasn't into it. Thoughts on Schopenhauer's quote on the Quran? He dislikes Islam as Schopenhauer hates life and any affirmation of life. What would he find in the Quran that is valuable to him? Referring to his quote. That's from Hassan. I got to tell you something, okay? Schopenhauer, in my opinion, took ideas from the Quran. I know he hates Islam, don't get me wrong. I know he hates Hegel. He despised Hegel. Guys, Schopenhauer's biography reads like a book of misery. The guy was a miserable human being. Okay, it's like a low life. It's just like a low life, man. He was responsible for an old woman falling down the stairs, and he had to pay her. He had to pay her a stipend because he injured her. When she died, he celebrated because he didn't have to pay the stipend no more. He was like just a worm of a man. Just a worm of a man. Okay, but however, he was still a genius, and he did bring very valuable insights. But I will tell you guys this, and I know you guys are going to call me crazy. One day I'm going to write books about this. I promise you guys. I'm still formulating my philosophy. But one day I'm going to be a gray old man. I'm not going to be on the mat so much anymore. And I'm going to dedicate my life to writing books. And I got to tell you something. There's no doubt in my mind. He took from the Quran. Guys, his book is called, listen to what his book is called. Will and Representation. Now, Will and Representation is a crazy, crazy good book. It's incredible. Less than 1% of people who are going to read it are going to ever understand it. Less than 1%. Like 1 million people will read it. A hair will understand what he's talking about. To understand Schopenhauer, you have to understand Kant. And understanding Kant is so difficult. People think, I understood Kant. I read Kant. No, you didn't read Kant. Kant only is read by only professional philosophers. Only. Listen to how difficult Kant is to read, okay? Only professional philosophers read Kant. Reading Kant is like pulling teeth. He gives no examples. He doesn't do it like I do. Guys, when I explain to you a topic on philosophy, I package it in a bow. I spoon feed you. I give you an analogy. I sit down. I think of a way. I'm not that you guys are not smart. Of course, you guys are all smart people. But if you don't have experience in philosophy, if you didn't study philosophy, if you talk to me about medicine, I don't know. I didn't study medicine. The guy's he's got to give it to me in a way that I understand. If somebody wants to talk to me about engineering, I want to listen. I want to learn, but I don't know anything about engineering. Like, you got to make it really simple. You got to make the ABCs simple, right? So if you meet somebody in engineering who can make engineering simple, it'll be fascinating. However, if he gives me what we call shop talk, like I love button pushers, okay? I love my button pushers. They help me with my website, but they kill me when they give me the shop talk. Like, I don't understand anything about what they're doing. And they're telling me, well, you got to do this, you got to do that. Like, I got a guy who does construction for me, okay? When he's doing construction for me and I have to meet with him, it's like pulling teeth. Why? Because he's talking about all the construction problems they're having on the site. I'm like, yeah, I get it, but I don't understand any of this. I don't understand anything he's talking about. He's like, you have to understand, there's this, that. Dude, just tell me how much does it cost, how long is it going to take, and, that way I can go get a second opinion if I need to. But it's crazy how people forget that we don't understand. As a teacher, if you're a teacher, you got to know that this guy's, if he's new, you can't unload terms on him that he doesn't understand. You got to put yourself in the beginner's mind, and you got to introduce it to him in a way that he'll understand, because he doesn't have a background in this. Now, if you don't have a background in philosophy, understanding Kant is impossible. Impossible. You have to start low, build your way up, and then get to Kant. Kant is like black belt level stuff. It's like black belt level stuff. And people are going to say, oh, I read Kant, I get his ideas. You're wrong. If you haven't studied Kant for 10 years, you're not even scratched the surface. Okay, Kant is a very, very complex individual. Now, with that said, after you've studied Kant, then and only then can you understand Schopenhauer. And Schopenhauer says that himself in Will to Representation. He tells you, look, you got to have studied Kant. If you didn't study Kant, forget about me. Don't even think about talking about me. Now, I'll tell you something. His name is, the book is called Will and Representation. Where do you get this idea of will? If you read the Quran, it talks about the will of God, the will. Everything that moves this universe is the will of God, the will of God, the will of God. What does Schopenhauer say? Everything that moves in the universe is the will. Now, he doesn't say the will of God. He doesn't say the will of God. Actually, if you read his material closely, his book is called Will and Representation, and then later on, he swipes away representation. There's only the will. Well, wait a second, that sounds familiar. The Quran says, ultimately, it's the will of God. That's it. That's all there is. Ultimately, there's the will of God. That's the only force in the universe. Well, where have I heard that before, Mr. Schopenhauer? Of course, he hated Islam because he's European and he's Eurocentric. Everything Islam is bad. Everything European is good. We have that till today. Like, people just hate on Islam all the time. We're the most hated people on the face of the earth. It's pretty wild. 9/11, now what's happening in the Middle East. You have a rise of anti-Semitism. You have a rise of Islamophobia. Now these kids are protesting and they're exercising their right to freedom of speech, and people are hating on them. All these corporations now want to shut these kids down. Why? They're not breaking the law. They have the right to disagree. They have a right to say, look, we don't want to see people being bombarded and this and that. They're seeing children being taken out of the rubble. They can protest to this. What's wrong with that? Long story short, today it's become cool. I'm even really depressed, like sad to hear that Patrick Ben-David, the Value Tame, they're all like, I heard like clips now, they're spewing hate about Muslims. People send me this. Oh, Islam tells, they just came out with a clip. In the Quran, Islam, you're taught to kill the infidel. That's so wrong, man. That's absurd. That's absurd. Guys, I challenge Patrick Ben-David to bring me on his channel. I challenge him. I want to know, where does it say to kill all the infidels? I want to know, because I know the Quran very well, and I know the context very well. There's nowhere in the Quran it says kill every infidel. It doesn't say that. It's completely 100% untrue. I don't want to get into that history right now, but I guarantee you that's completely 100% true. The Quran says the opposite. The Quran says if you take one innocent life, if you kill one innocent human being, it's like you killed all of humanity. That's how important the single life is. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but back to Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer was telling us there's only will and representation. And if you read his book, at the end of the way, he swipes out the will. But he says the will is not God. It's a blind force. So everything you see in the world today, it's a result of this blind force. And the way he gets to it is actually quite romantic. I got to say, it's romantic. He pulls you in. He romances you. And he pulls you in, and he pulls you in, and he pulls you in, and he makes you realize, hey, there's this will. Now, let me explain to you a little bit about the will, because I know it sounds like we're the weirdest people. Philosophers are the weirdest, most obnoxious, most foolish people in the world. Okay, but bear with me for a second. Leibniz said it well, and I always refer to Leibniz. I love Leibniz. Leibniz really is a special thinker. Leibniz says, look at two billiard balls. One billiard ball hits another. So one billiard ball is stationary, and then another billiard ball comes on its way. It hits the stationary billiard ball. The stationary ball moves down the table, and the one that hit it stays where it was. So let's say you have the number one ball hit the number two ball. The number one ball is zooming towards the number two ball. It hits the number two ball. Boom. The number two ball goes flying down the table, and the number one ball just stays there stationary. Okay, now it depends how you hit it. The number one ball can roll or whatnot. That's irrelevant. Leibniz says, look, didn't you notice like there was a force passed from one ball to the other? And he called it the living force. Now, this is long before Star Trek, Star Wars, okay? The force, the force. They took that from Leibniz, okay? Leibniz is the first guy to talk about the force, okay? He called it the living force. Why did he call it the living force? Because if you understand determinism, and I have a nice video on determinism. If you guys type in Coach Zahabi determinism, I explain determinism in more detail. He's saying, look, everything in the universe is this force moving these objects. Of course, he traces it all the way back to God. Now, don't forget, Leibniz was after the Quran. So Leibniz also is very influenced by the Quran, because the Quran is telling you that. The Quran is telling you everything, the whole universe, it's all a result of the will of God. Now, whether you believe in the Quran or not, the Quran does say that. The Quran did influence these thinkers over time. Because in the Quran, it's strict. There is nothing outside the will of God. Strictly. Now, that's going to bring a question of free will. Muslims are compatibilists. We believe we have free will, but also everything is determined. Leibniz was also a compatibilist. He believed everything was determined by God, but also we have free will. How do we gel them together? That's a discussion for another day. It's not that hard. I've done it many times on the show in the past. There are a few options where it's logically possible to marry the two. But Leibniz was telling us, look, there's this living force. It's being passed down from one object to the other. It's moving everything we see. It's one force. He traces it back to one force. It has to be. There couldn't have been two forces. That's a logical impossibility. Schopenhauer accepts that this is one force. He calls it the will. But he referred to it as a blind passion, meaning it's just a rage. But how could it be a blind passion? That's why I find Schopenhauer fell off the rails. Schopenhauer is saying that everything we see is a result of a blind force. Yes, this will has the desire for food, hunger, sex, thirst, every desire you've ever had, because you are. He says, look, you're an object like everything else in this world. You have a will within you, all your desires. That's what the universe wants. The universe has all these desires. You're just a happenstance of an object in the universe. That's how he romances you into his way of thinking. He says, look, you see these objects around you? You see that rock over there? You see that tree over there? You see that you see that wheelbarrow over there? You see that house over there? All these things are objects. He goes, well, look at your hand. That's an object too. Your body, your flesh and bone, you're an object too. But you so happen to have a first-person view from this object. And you're having a direct experience of this will. You have these desires. You want to eat, you want to drink, you want shelter, you want friendships, you want to find a woman, you want to have sex, you want to have prestige, you want to have a status, you want to have all these things. That's just a fact. You're having a direct experience. He goes, that's what the universe is. It's just this blind desires. It's just a hunk. The universe is a stomach. Now, I know it doesn't make sense to you guys, but believe me, he tees it off beautifully. He builds it up really beautifully. He says, look, the universe is just this type of raging desire. And he thinks it's like evil. He paints the most morbid pictures. The most morbid. And he says it's just blind. There's no meaning. But here's where he screws up royally. This is where he gets destroyed. If it's true what he's saying, if it's not God, but just a blind force, then all the things I'm saying right now on this mic are a result of blind forces. There's no intention. Because if I'm just a result of blind forces, you can't account for intelligence. Intelligence doesn't exist. It's just a passion. It's just a raw desire. It's just an insane point of view to have. Because every word I'm saying in this mic right now is a byproduct of a blind force. It's all by luck, fluke. This is where I think his philosophy completely collapses like a house of cards. But he couldn't see it because Schopenhauer could never accept there's a God. Why? Because in his mind, this world is so evil, so dark. He was a pessimist. Now, some people try to argue he wasn't. If he's not a pessimist, nobody is. He was so dark in his view about humanity and the world around us. Everybody's so evil, so dark. The universe is just pain. He basically convinces you the universe is just pain. And he says the only thing we have is art. Art. Like when we see a beautiful picture, when we see something beautiful, it takes us out of pain just for a little bit. He was a lover of art. If we hear a beautiful song, if we see a beautiful theater piece, if we watch an incredible, work of art, it for an instant takes us out of this agony we call life. So when you were with a beautiful woman, okay, for an instant you can come out of the agony, but then you're going to go right back in the pit. Okay, you had a beautiful meal. Okay, for an instant you can come out of this agony we call life. He's like, for what is this life? It was just such a painful experience. It was better not to be born. Basically, it was better not to be born. He's very pessimistic. Now, if he was honest, I don't believe him for a second. Why? Because if he was serious about what he's saying, why didn't he just kill himself? He doesn't believe in an afterlife. Why didn't he just put one in the dome? Why not climb up the highest bridge you find or climb up the highest building and just end it all, man? If you don't believe in anything, you're a pessimist. Life is pain and suffering. Why not just jump? I think in his heart of hearts, he's not a pessimist. And I think in his heart of hearts, he believes in God. I just think his psychology was so dark, he could never accept it. Because if he walked the walk, he would have jumped off a bridge. He would have put a bullet in his dome. He would have drank the hemlock. He would have drank the poison. Why are you going on? He lived into his old age. Why are you going on? If life is so horrific. Because think about it. Yeah, he liked women. Okay, he was not a handsome guy, but he liked women. Okay, at your age, didn't have Viagra in his day and age. You can't enjoy women anymore. Why are you sticking around this? Why are you sticking around this world for? End it. Drink the hemlock. He didn't do it. He lived his days. He lived as old as he can. Why? If the world was such agony. That's why I think he said one thing and he did another. And he said one thing because I think he was just ultimately just venting. Okay, guys, I'm going to do super chats and non-super chats as always. Coach, is Ibn Sina the greatest intellectual? That's from Sirde. He was a phenomenal intellectual, but I can't say there's one great intellectual of all time. They all had great contributions to humanity. Humanity is just one civilization contributing to the other, and we build on one another. We build on one another. We don't have one that's the greatest. I always hate when people say, oh, this civilization was the best. This civilization was the best. No. They were standing on the shoulders of giants. There was a civilization before them that was great, and they just it's like saying, okay, is George St. Pierre the greatest fighter of all time? Well, he was built off Hoist Gracie. Was Hoist Gracie the greatest fighter of all time? Well, he was built on Elio. Was Elio the greatest of all time? Well, he was built on Kimura. Was Kimura the greatest of all time? Well, he was built on Kano. Like, who is the greatest of all time? Everybody had somebody that he was built on. So we can have the talk about the GOAT and all that, but at the end of the day, we're all built on someone else. BJJ originated in Brazil because of a Japanese guy spreading jiu-jitsu, but how did high-level martial arts and grappling originate in Dagestan, Russia? That's from Maroon. I think the Russians always did combat sports. Like, I don't know how they originated, but I'm sure it goes way back, because every Russian I ever met he always wrestled or did boxing. Like, they love combat sports. So I'm not sure how it originated, but I think like almost all the Russians and Ukrainians I've ever met, they've done some martial art, either judo. I think it's heavily embedded. Kickboxing, they're very good kickboxers as well. I just think it's a big part of their culture, and I wouldn't be surprised if it goes back all the way to the old school, like ancient age. Like, I mean, the Eastern Bloc always wrestled, like the Mongolians. You know, these guys, they always wrestle, and most great civilizations wrestled. I'm looking to build gym software. Are the current software used by BJJ/MMA gyms owners good enough? Question mark. What's missing in them? That's from Zico. I'm not an expert in this, my friend. You'd have to call my front desk and ask them what they would like to see. Hi, coach. How do I stop hamstring pain when I high kick? I'm a Muay Thai fighter. I take the time to stretch and start gradually. Run, spar, and skip a lot plus pad work, question mark. That's from Chief also. Don't stretch, try dynamic stretching. I cover it in strong and stable running for life. Guys, strong and stable running for life, an absolute must have. I talk about dynamic warm up, and then cooling down with static stretching is okay, but don't go too deep in your stretching. Dynamic stretching is the key. And to build your hamstring, you need to slowly build your sprints. In my opinion, it's number one way to build hamstrings, especially for Muay Thai, because Muay Thai is a quick fire. If you lift weights, you're never going to get the quick fire that you would get from sprinting. I also like air bike, and I also like sled pushing for Muay Thai. Very, very good. Sled pushing is good. Don't go too heavy on the weight. You want explosiveness for Muay Thai. It's a great hamstring builder. Make sure to incorporate, if you can, sled pushing and sprinting. Now, when you sprint, of course, you have to start with a small dose and slowly work your way up to higher doses. Running and Muay Thai go hand in hand. What else we got here? In volume 2 of the World as Will and Idea, Schopenhauer says the Quran is detestable doctrine. How can he take ideas from it? I agree with you. Okay, he says that because he's reading a translation, and if you read carefully, he also in his comments says, it might be lost in translation on me. And I'll tell you why, okay? Because he had a contemporary, Goethe. Goethe praised the Quran. Goethe was the German Shakespeare. Now, I'm not saying Schopenhauer praised the Quran. I'm not saying that. I'm saying he took ideas from the Quran. Okay? Because look, if you read the Quran in Arabic and you read in English, it's two different things. Okay? The Quran in Arabic is very beautiful and moving. Very beautiful. In English, it doesn't have the same appeal. Okay? It's just, there's something lost in translation. The Quran in Arabic is beautiful. Think about the most amazing song you've ever heard. It's greater than that. It's very moving, the Quran in Arabic. In English, it loses something in translation. It loses its emotional. It depends what translation you read. Like, there's some translations that are way better than the other. Okay, but typically when Muslims translate the Quran in English, they're going to be very careful. It's almost mechanical the way they translate it, because they want to be very careful not to get things wrong, and they always get things wrong. It's very difficult. Translating is very, very difficult. It's not easy. There is no perfect translation, because to translate, you have to interpret, and they want to interpret as objectively as possible, so as not to be accused. Because in Islam, you don't want to be accused of like putting your ideas in the Quran. Understand? So they give it to you almost as binary as possible. Why? Because the Quran criticizes scribes of the past of rewriting their scripture to put in their ideas for their own benefit. So it's a major sin to like try to warp the Quran in your way. It's like a very feared thing. Like, nobody wants to be the guy who did that. So you get almost like this binary translation. So any translation he was reading is not the Quran, it's the translation. So he admits that. He's not crazy. Now Goethe praises the Quran, says Look up Goethe. Okay, Goethe is one of the greatest intellectuals of all time. He's one of the greatest thinkers of all time. If you look at people's top IQ in history, he's always on the list. Some people rank him as number one. He was a brilliant human being. He had the complete opposite of Schopenhauer. Now, Schopenhauer detested the Quran. Yes, I totally agree. He hates Muslims. However, in my opinion, he took a lot of ideas from the Muslims. Because don't forget, because Schopenhauer was part of the Renaissance movement. Before the Renaissance movement, you had the Islamic Golden Age. So these Europeans grew up hearing about how brilliant the Muslims were. Math, science, history, geography, engineering. The Muslims were far ahead of Europe. Far ahead, light years ahead. And then they started to crumble after the Mongolian Empire. So the relics of the Islamic world were passed down to the Europeans. Islam had a lot to do with the Renaissance in Europe. A lot to do with the Renaissance in Europe. So Schopenhauer grew up hearing about the commentator. You guys brought it up earlier. Ibn Sina influenced Averroes. And Averroes is the commentator. When Latin thinkers were writing about the commentator, they're referring to Averroes, a Muslim thinker. They call him the commentator. Why do they call him the commentator? Because they don't want to give any props to an Arab guy. Western civilization was very hostile and still is to this day towards the Arabs. Very hostile, even though they took so much from the Arabic world. So much. Guys, let me tell you something about the Arab world. Okay, like them or hate them. You wouldn't have any philosophical works if it wasn't for the Arabs. Okay, let me give you guys a little history here. Okay. When Rome converted to Christianity, they burned any book that was Aristotelian or Greek. Don't forget, the Greeks influenced the Romans adopted Christianity. Now, the Romans were Greek thinking. That's why you have the term Greco-Roman, because it's a mixture of Greek and Roman thinking. The Romans and Greek were very pragmatic. If we believe something because it works, okay, they were very scientific, and the Greeks were very pragmatic, and the Romans were very pragmatic, okay? It had to work. Like, the Romans, I'll tell you about the Romans, okay? The Romans they were one of the first to incorporate the ark. In their buildings, you see there's an ark, okay? And when you build an ark, there's a keystone. The stone in the middle is the keystone. They build like a wood frame underneath, and then they stack bricks. And then when they stack the bricks in a circular fashion, so you have this ark, they remove the wood structure, and then you have this solid ark. When the Romans would remove the wood structure, they would make the engineer stand underneath it. Because if that brick falls, it's going to kill the engineer. So if you did a job for hold on a second, guys, I'm getting a cramp. My foot's cramping. I did some sprints tonight. My foot is screaming right now. It's cramping because I didn't drink enough water. Okay, back to the Romans. The Romans were pragmatic. Okay. Who's the best swords teacher? Well, okay, you teach these guys, let's make them fight. Whoever team will win, that's the new sword trainer of the Romans. That's how they were. They were very pragmatic. Put up or shut up. Now, Rome converts to Christianity. The Christians hated Rome. They wanted to destroy Rome. They hated anything Roman. Romans love sex. Christians didn't like sex. Roman like blue. Christians hate blue. I'm giving you for instance, okay? They wanted to wash their hands from Rome. They despised the Romans. The Christians despised Rome. So they burned all their books. They burned all their Greek thinking books. Of course, some Romans didn't want their books burnt. So they ran away. When they went to Muslim lands, those books ended up in Muslim lands. The Muslims conserved it because why? Philosophy, logic is allowed in Islam. Non-Quranic books are allowed. Now today, let me tell you something very important. You'll have Muslims, crazy. They make crazy statements like, oh, philosophy is forbidden. They make crazy statements. They don't even know what philosophy is. Then my first question is, okay, what is philosophy? None of them can define it. It goes back to some crazy misunderstanding. It's a real crazy, because the Arabs used to love philosophy and study philosophy. The Christians, the early movement of Christians, hated philosophy. The books ended up in Muslim hands, and of course the Muslims had a boom. They had a boom of logical thinking and science, okay? There's a lot more to it than that, because also the Arabs had a boom in paper. Now, paper was invented by a guy named Cai Lun, Chinese thinker who invented paper. But when the Arabs discovered paper, they had a massive boom. Like it was the internet of the day. Information, you have an idea, write it down. Paper is abundant. So you had a boom of scholarship. Plus, they were studying logic formally. Now, the early Muslims were crazy about logic. Crazy. Have the most crazy dialogues about logic. A real work of art. Guys, I've studied, my specialty is Greek philosophy, Arabic, Muslim philosophy, because they're not all Arabic, so I can't say Arabic. A lot of them were Persian as well. And European philosophy, or British empiricism especially. Okay, so the Enlightenment period. These are my 3 periods. That's why we're always going to talk about these. I spent 20 years studying this. Now, the Arabs had a boom. Why? They had really powerful logical books, and they had paper. So they're all writing their ideas on paper. Guys, you guys underestimate the value of paper. Imagine you have an idea, you want to write it down. Where are you going to write it? Oh, I'm going to write it on leather. Okay, go ahead. Go write on leather. You know how hard it is to write something on leather? It's very difficult. Papyrus? Oh, well, it's very hard to get papyrus, but if you write on papyrus and you want to pass down your ideas for generations, papyrus doesn't last, but papyrus will dissolve. What else are you going to write it on? Oh, I'll go write it on that stone. Yeah, good luck walking around with stones. It is very difficult to write your ideas down. It's very difficult. Paper was a massive. You want to write on a scroll. You know how difficult it is to, you know how inconvenient a scroll is? You ever try to stack scrolls? It's not easy. You ever try to read a scroll? It's really tough. The Arabs were finally having codex. You know what a codex is? It's like a book, like a regular book you have to. That's what we call a codex. People are writing down their ideas. People are sending each other letters. Information, super highway. The Arabs are booming. They're doing incredible. They far surpass Europe. Europe is nothing. Europe is in the dark age. Rome is crumbling. The greatest golden age of all time happened at that time. The Muslim golden age. I know people are going to scoff at that. It's a fact. It's a consensus among historians. There's a boom. And then the Muslims, they get cut down by the Mongolians. Okay, the Mongols, Genghis Khan's descendants come and rip us a new one. Okay, they take all our libraries and they throw them in the ocean. They throw them in the river. They destroy our libraries, destroy them. Okay, now our books get in European hands because, again, the same thing happened. The same thing. It's amazing how ironic it is. The same thing that Christians did to Roman thinkers, the Mongolians did to Muslim thinkers. So the Mongolians come, they chop us all down. They're not interested in our books. They just want our engineers. The Mongols were super pragmatic. They don't care about anything else. They just want engineers. They just want medicine and engineers. They don't care about philosophy. They don't care about logic. Here's an arrow in your head. That's all the logic we want. That's the Mongolian attitude at the time. They chuck all our books. They kill all intellectuals. They're not interested in intellectual academia. Universities are an absurdity to them. They don't go to school. That's absurd. That's an absurdity. We're here putting arrows in your head. If you were so smart, how come we've dominated you? That was their thinking. If these books are so important, how come we're killing you? How come we're burning they didn't necessarily burn people. They would chuck them in boiling water, which is maybe even worse. I'm not sure. Guys, the Mongolians were incredibly cruel, and their logic was, if we beat you, your books are worthless. Now, books on logic are going into Europe, and you're having a renaissance. Now, the renaissance is much more complicated than that. It has a lot to do with the Black Plague. I'll get to that another day. But the Arabs, why didn't they revive? Let me tell you why they didn't revive. Because it's been 1,000 years since Mongols roamed the earth the way they did. There was a major sticking point where Europe skyrocketed past the Arabs. The Arabs, let me just make one more point before I go into this other issue. See, the Muslims used to love logic and they were super successful. Now the Muslims say, a lot of them say, oh, logic is haram, it's forbidden. Like, don't get deep into logic. That's completely wrong. I would debate anybody in the world on this. It's a complete fabrication that came much later. The Muslims adopted a Christian attitude because the Christians had that attitude. The Christians were like, hey, burn these books, these logic books. They're not the Bible. We don't need it. The Muslims, the early Muslims, took it wholeheartedly, became great logicians, great mathematicians, great engineers, great astrologers, great everything. Then They started adopting Christian attitudes. Oh, these books are no good. And it all has to do with Ghazali, which I've studied for years. It's a misunderstanding because he used the word philosophy. And for philosophy, he didn't mean logic. He meant blind followers of Aristotle. It's just such a crazy misunderstanding. And all these Muslim guys who denounce logic, philosophy, they don't even know what they're talking about. They don't even know what philosophy is. If you ask them to define philosophy, they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. I challenge any Muslim thinker in the world to challenge me on this point. He will not last. He will not last. Anyways. So the Muslims had another sticking point that really held them back. It's fascinating. They didn't want the printing press. Johann Gutenberg invents the printing press. Europe takes it wholeheartedly. The Muslims successfully rejected for 300 years, punishable by death. Now, does the Quran forbid the printing press? Absolutely not. Doesn't mention it. Doesn't exist in the time of the Quran. Does the hadiths, does the Prophet alayhi salam's tradition forbid it? No. The scholars of the time thought it was a threat. A threat to what? What's so bad about printing our books? The printing press was the new internet. Imagine a country today saying, hey, we don't want internet. No. Forget email. You're crazy email? No. If you want somebody to know something, you write them a letter. You take a pen and a paper, my friend, and you write down the letter. You write down your thoughts. You go buy a stamp. You stick that stamp in, and 4 or 5, maybe 10 days later, he'll get your letter. And that's how we're gonna do it in this state. So you want to tell your friend on the other side of the state something? Well, it's going to take 4 or 5 days. And by the time he writes you, imagine trying to do business that way. People all around the world are sending each other messages via email, text messages. They're video chatting. No. Your state doesn't have any of these technologies. What would happen to business in your state? It would take a nosedive. The Arabs did that to themselves. Why? I have no idea. Well, I have a theory, but there's no concrete reason. There was no reason why the printing press should be forbidden. There was no reason. It was ludicrous. The whole Muslim world rejected the printing press. Imagine you want a copy of that book, you got to write it out by hand. Whether Europeans are printing books left and right. Oh, you want 100 copies of this book? No problem. We'll have it for you by Monday. Leave your book here Thursday. Monday, you'll have 100 copies. Information superhighway. Europe is climbing up the ranks. They're exchanging information and ideas faster than ever. They're doing business better than ever. The Arabs, it took 300 years for the printing press. And who brought us the printing press? Napoleon brought it by force. He brought it by force because when he conquered Egypt, he brought the printing press with him. You can't punish Napoleon by death. It was an absurd fear that Muslims conjured up in their head, and there was no reason. There's nothing today. Nobody says the printing press is haram today. Nobody, not one person says printing press should be forbidden. It was just another crazy glitch. And we can definitely learn a lot about it because it sent the Muslim world back. Now we're having a resurgence. The Muslim world's coming back together. They're online. There's voices coming online. People are writing books. People are getting more in the debating world. And it's just like the voices are finally coming, But still, I mean, there's so much friction between East and West, and I consider Islam actually to be more West than East. So I can consider Islam to be a Western religion ultimately. But there's just so much friction. It's just insane. And there doesn't have to be. Schopenhauer believed in Wahdat al-Wujud. He definitely read Ibn Arabi. That's from Sird. Guys, that's a long topic, but he definitely was influenced by Muslim thinkers. Even though he hates Muslim thinkers, he was definitely, without a doubt, and he was influenced by Indian thinkers as well, but he was without a doubt well-read in this Muslim philosophy. I don't know, man. I hear that some complaint of hate from African Americans. I think everyone has their struggles. That's from Pompey. Look, the African Americans have definitely had their struggles, definitely. And they're definitely discriminated against in the U.S., definitely. In the West, definitely. People see a black man walking across the street, they get scared of him. Why? There's prejudice. like it or not, we have prejudice. It exists in everybody, but we got to work every day to minimize it and pull it down and overcome these prejudice. It's an instinctual. It does exist. You know, biologists talk about it. Okay, like for instance, I'll give you a for instance, okay? When the Europeans came to Americas, some Native Americans were disgusted. So they kind of ran away and like created a camp outside because they didn't want, they weren't scared, they were disgusted. They saw a white person, looked sick to them. Now, their repulsion, tell us, evolutionary biologists say, oh, because they were repulsed, they didn't get the germs. They didn't get the foreign germs, the European germs. And therefore, some of them survived because they were grossed out. Now, it's not my philosophy, guys. This is, I've heard a biologist once give a lecture, and he was talking about why disgust can actually help us survive, right? You see somebody throwing up, you're disgusted, you run away, right? Because you don't want to catch a sickness. But if some people didn't have that reaction, they'd be like, hey, they would investigate, hey, are you okay? They'd pat the person. Then they catch the disease and they die. So he was talking about how like some cultures, you have some of their ancestry that survived because they were disgusted. He was explaining the evolutionary benefits of disgust. I found it fascinating. However, we know now that other races are not going to poison us. We know they're not going to kill us. We're past that. We've overcome that danger, and now it's okay. We have to know, oh, I'm grossed out by somebody. I can overcome that. I know intellectually that it's wrong now for me to act on it. Okay, so mankind is going through phases. We're maturing. There was a time for a need for disgust in certain situations, not always. Some biologists tell us, look, this is why people get disgusted, because it actually helped you survive. I'm not an expert in this, okay? I'm just kind of like maybe butchering it a bit, but I'm doing my best here to remember how he put it. And there's a reason why people get disgusted. Okay. But now we know that if you help somebody who's sick, you're not going to catch their disease, depending on what disease it is, etc. Okay? If there's a pandemic in the future, yes, maybe we're all going to run and hide. But right now we know there's no pandemic. You see somebody sick, you help them, you aid them. You might get sick too, but you're probably not going to die from it. So we do it, right? But back in the day, you see a guy coughing. There's no penicillin in the world yet. People would run for the hills. Okay, guys, I'm doing super chats as well. My friend and professors were arrested at NYU. Over 100 of them. Police stormed the Solidarity encampment during the Maghrib prayer and brutally assaulted dozens. One sprayed a woman with mace. Okay, so that's from Dario, guys. If you don't know, there's a lot of encampment now in front of universities. Kids are young. The youth are protesting against what's happening in the Middle East, and they're raining down hard on them. They're beating them. They're spraying them. They're beating them up. They're imprisoning them. They're arresting them. Those schools are funded, right? Their sponsors, the people who write the big checks to those schools, they're pro-Israel. So they don't want those encampments. They don't want people protesting against Israel because they see a threat. They see it as a threat. Those are the people who sign the checks. The universities don't want to lose their checks. So what do? They call the cops and they say, get these kids off our property. But they're just voicing their opinion on the matter. It comes down to money. That's why I tell you, the Muslim world, you should get rich. Be strong. You don't want to get stepped on. Guys, let me tell you something. I think this to everybody out there. Okay, guys, if you don't want people to step on you, people will step on you. If people see, that's the way of the world, guys. It's not my philosophy. It's not me telling you guys to step on people. No, I'm telling you, if you're weak, the world will step on you. Now, the beauty of being strong is if you could be strong, now you have the chance not to step on the weak. That's the beauty of strength. Like now, once you're strong, rich, and powerful, what are you going to do with that power, fame, and fortune. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to step on the little ones, or are you going to actually make this world a better place? That's the beauty of being strong. Now you have a choice. But if you're weak, guess what? Your only choice is try to survive this stomping you're about to eat. Okay, so I highly recommend it, guys. If you ever get rich and powerful, please be good. Don't be evil. Help the world. Make the world a better place. Now, these rich guys writing the checks, they don't care about making the world a better place. They care about their interests. So you want our checks to keep flowing in? Call the cops and beat these kids and get them off the streets. I highly applaud these young kids. I wish I could be there with you. I think it's right. I think we have to end the violence in the Middle East. I think we need human rights for everybody. The Palestinians have been colonized for too long. They were stripped of their land, put in an open air prison, and tortured over time. Okay, I'm not gonna get into it into a long thing, but we all know it's an eyesore. Imagine we did that in the USA. We said, oh, we're gonna round up all these blacks, we're gonna put them in an encampment, and we're gonna torture them. I've talked about this on end in this channel. I'm not gonna go into a huge tangent on it, but we know, and every excuse you give, oh, but they're violent. Everybody's violent when they're being colonized. Everybody who's being kicked off their land, who's being shot at, they're always gonna rebel. We want you to stop rebelling. Well, give us back our land. We're never going to stop rebelling. Make it fair. Now, I think both Jew and Muslim and Arab can live in peace. That's my hope. I think in the future it will come to be like the way blacks and whites came to live together, like the way Irish and English came to live together, like the way French and Algerians, believe me, the French and Algerians didn't love each other for a long time. The French and the Indian now get along, etc. We've had these type of wars in the past. They will over time, especially the future generation. I have high hopes for Generation Z. They are far more tolerant. They are far more loving. They are far more peaceful. It will come. And everybody who incited violence in this war, you're going to be humiliated. Guys, I'm telling you, don't be a voice for violence. Don't be out there, oh, you deserve this, you deserve that on either side. Innocent civilians should never be killed on either side. There should be compromise on both sides. We can live together. We can show the world that we can live together and get along. Muslims and Jews, you're supposed to be about justice and righteousness. You're supposed to be a model to the world. Muslims and Jews, you're supposed to be a model to the world on how to treat others. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, etc. The Ten Commandments doesn't have colonize this land. It doesn't have that. It says don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. Those are the paramount. If colonizing the land was more important, it would have been in the 10 Commandments. It's not. These are the rules. These are the most important 10. Don't break these 10. The rest are important, but not as important. Here's a summary. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, don't murder. Muslims and Jews are not giving a good example to the world. We're giving a poor example. And we should be at the forefront of how to be fair and just and kind and loving and spreading justice and good example in the world. People ask me, hey, why don't you swear on your podcast? Why don't you? That's the whole point. I'm a Muslim guy. I can't. I don't want to put a bad example out there in the world. That's a very important element to remember. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to try to spread good into the world. Okay, guys, with that said, let's see what else we have here. I have a couple of super chats to bang out. I'm always doing super chats and non-super chats. Hey, Coach, have asked this before, but curious to your thoughts on numerology. That's from Dedicated. One, I've never seen any proof of numerology. Never. If anybody has any concrete proof that numerology is actually true, please send it my way. I'd love to see it. This is from Chargers fan 3421. What are your thoughts on recent explosion of online sports betting and its advertising? ? Do you see this becoming an epidemic among men? I think it's always been there. I don't think it's an epidemic, recent epidemic. There's countless betting this, betting that. I don't bet, guys. I don't gamble, but it's everywhere. It's always been everywhere. I don't think it's a recent thing. Thoughts on thinkers like George Lakoff, Douglas Hofstadter, Donald Hoffman, Bernardo Kasprut, Chris Langan. Actually, it's funny you said that. I actually just recently came across the works of Chris Langan, and I'm actually doing a deep dive. It's quite fascinating. Chris Langan, for those of you guys don't know who he is, he has one of the highest recorded IQs in our day and age. Okay, he's a brilliant mind, brilliant mind. I've come across his documentary in the past, but I have not come across his CTMU till very recently. I didn't know he had a book on CTMU. I remember seeing a second documentary of him where he was talking about his ideas that he was putting to paper, but I had not come across his work. Now I'm reading CTMU. I find it fascinating. It is fascinating. Again, it is very, very similar to stuff we've read in the past. You know, many great thinkers have said, guys, he's a big believer in God. He gives in his book arguments that I've brought up in the past. He does it in a slightly different way. And he's quite fascinating. He's a very fascinating individual. You mentioned Bernardo Kasprut. I actually listened to a conversation he had with Bernardo. Unfortunately, Bernardo had not read his material. He had not read Chris Langan's material. So I think the conversation could have gone a lot better if Bernardo Kasprut, who's also an idealist, so many, Bernardo, I don't think he says he believes in God. He believes in the, what does he call it? Mind at large, which is basically the mind of God. But he won't say it that way because, the taboo of religion. He does write books about the truths about religion. They are saying the truth, but he does believe in some kind of ultimate intelligence, okay? Chris Langan, he's more straight up about it. He's like, look, there's a God. Guys, you got to deal with it. All these new atheists. Oh, my favorite part. Oh, man, I wish I was there. I wish I was I would shake Chris Langan's hand. I would give him a kiss on the cheek. I would just grab him. I would kiss him on the cheek. You know why? Because he poo-poos on Richie Dawkins. I love he calls him Richie Dawkins. Just poo-poos on him. Guys, I know you guys think Richie Dawkins is so smart. Oh, Richie Dawkins, you're Richard Dawkins, the God delusion. You're so smart and intelligent, Richie. Guys, it's buffoonery. You guys I made millions on this book. He made millions. Millions. And he's a moron. I gotta say it. I'm sorry. Okay? Because he goes into the arena of philosophy. He's trying to get philosophical about his ideas. Look, he's a biologist / reporter. That's what he is. Talk about biology. Come into the arena of philosophy, sure, but be humble about it. Ask us, why do you guys think this? Why do you think that? There are atheists that disagree. That's fine. But he comes in here like, oh, I'm going to use logic, scientific logic, and explain to you all these logical inaccuracies you guys have. And he just humiliates himself over and over again. And I love how Langan just rips him apart. Langan just destroys his argument. He says, look, Richard Dawkins is just a bumbling fool. And I love it. I love to, because he's a renowned expert in logic. And he's not a fan of Sam Harris either, by the way. He just rips Sam Harris. And look, I don't think IQ is everything. I'm not saying IQ is everything, but you can't say this guy doesn't have a good IQ. His IQ dwarfs Harris and Dawkins. Dwarfs. He's in the 200s, guys. Okay, so the guys giving the IQ test can't measure him accurately because he's too smart for them. Okay, that's just how intelligent this man is. Again, IQ doesn't mean he's right. I'm not trying to make an appeal to authority here. All I'm saying is that you can't say, look, dumb people believe in God and smart people don't believe are atheists. All smart people are atheists. All people believe in God are just dumb. They're too dumb. No, you're wrong. Okay, just completely, utterly wrong. Now, there are some things that Chris says I don't think is. I would love to get on a podcast with Chris Langan. If anybody out there messages him and he would willing to do a podcast with me, I would love to have a discussion with him. He's a fascinating human being. I'm deep diving in his book right now. It is great. It's fascinating. Anyways, I don't want to get into it because it's too niche, but he's a fascinating guy. Richie Dawkins. Oh, I can't believe you guys spent millions on his book. I can't believe you guys spent millions. Like, I get it. He can be persuasive. But his reasoning is, so many errors. It's crazy, man. It's just insane. Coach, I come from a family of heavy drinkers in Australia. I've struggled with alcohol and drugs since I was 16. Thanks to your content, I'm now sober. A kiss for you, my friend. Fighting Muay Thai and happy at 26. Cheers, mate. That's from Bradley. Bradley, you're a gentleman, a scholar. I'm so happy to hear that. Now, Bradley, can I ask you a question? Wouldn't you love if they never gave you a taste of alcohol? Like, would you love? Imagine your whole life you never had a taste of alcohol. You never gambled. You never had any of these vices. You didn't even know they existed. Wouldn't your life be better? Like, imagine, like, look at these people who get hooked on it and then they come out of it and they're like, oh, life is so good. Life is so good. I was hooked. I had this monkey on my back. I had this thing pulling me down. I had this thing crippling me. I had to drink poison. Look, if you taste alcohol, it's the most disgusting drink in history. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. But if you push through, you get this happy buzz. And like, who's the first guy to push through? Let me tell you who's the first guy to push through. He was eating rotten fruit. He had no choice. That was the only food they had. And in ancient times, drinking alcohol was safer than drinking water. We're past that. Now it's all marketing. It's all marketing. You know why men drink alcohol? Let me tell you why men drink alcohol. Let me tell you the truth about alcohol. Alcohol equals women. If I drink alcohol and I give this woman alcohol, she'll let me have her way with her. That's the whole industry. It's all based on sex. People drink alcohol because they want to develop a tolerance. So they want to get a girl drunk. She's more drunk than he is. It's also prestige. Look, I bought this fine alcohol. I have extra money. I could spend it on alcohol. It's all about flexing and showing women, hey, I have money for alcohol and I'll get you drunk. And women get drunk so they can do things they wouldn't do otherwise and not feel so guilty about it. Of course, women like to get drunk because it feels good also, but also they can lower their inhibitions. They can act a little dumb. It's entertaining. It keeps boredom at bay. The whole industry is about women getting free drinks and men paying for it. That's the truth. Women won't pay for drinks. If she's a beautiful girl, she won't pay for any drinks. You're offering her drinks. It's an ego boost. She's like, oh, the more drinks I get, the more beautiful I am. I'm telling my girlfriends, look how many drinks I've had. Look how stunning these men think I am. It's all ego and prestige. And it's all about men wanting to get women into bed. That's the truth. The whole industry is based on this. It's not going to die anytime soon, but that's what it's about. Men drink because it's cool, because it ultimately will lead to women in your bed. That's it. And women, I'm not saying everybody drinks for that purpose, but the industry is surviving on this. The industry is surviving. There might be a small amount of people that love it for the taste, or it's a cultural thing. Yeah, but it all started to women. They made it taste better because, hey, we sell more. It all ended up starting for women. I'm very happy to see you're sober, my friend. Intelligence as emergence phenomenon isn't completely incomprehensible, I don't think. That's from Warren Kenner. Man, you just opened up a huge can of worms there. I don't even know if I want to tackle this. Death is only the beginning. That's from 1 foot out the door. Well, your handle says it all. Can you please recommend another author similar to Juan Cole? Thank you in advance. That's when WFX. I'd have to look it up, you know. Hold on a second. The weirdest thing just happened. A thumbs down just pointed. Wow. I just saw a thumbs down flash up on my screen. Like, I don't know where it came from. Like a thumbs down flashed onto my screen. It doesn't make any sense. I can't believe. Okay, maybe I'm seeing things. Because of hedonism, coach. That's from Misan. Absolutely. Is it possible to get Gordon Ryan levels in your opinion? And if so, how many years do you think it would take to get there? How can I get you to help me become a UFC champion as my personal coach? ? That's from Tristan. Tristan, you have to come visit me in person, buddy. And look, of course it's possible. He did it. How did he do it? Now, a lot of you are going to tell me, coach, he takes a lot of steroids. Yeah, he takes a lot of steroids. He also trains really hard. He also met the right trainer. He also worked around the clock. He also dedicated his entire life to reaching that level. It's not just steroids. There's a lot of guys on steroids never reach that level. Okay, so that is part of the recipe. I won't lie. I cannot tell a lie. This mouth cannot tell a lie. However, there's a lot of other stuff that goes into it. And believe me, hard work is one of them. 6 a.m. in Sweden. I was just listening to your AMA from 2019 when I saw your live. Thank you, coach, for all the gems. Everything from fitness, philosophy, economy, and life advice. Allahumma barik. Thank you, brother Lukman. You're a gentleman and a scholar. I appreciate you very, very much. And I hope one day we train in Sweden. Why you gotta spam your message? Oh, that's a complaint. Coach, do you ever do BJJ seminars? If so, when and where? How long are they? Days? Question mark. Or just a couple of hours? That's from Leo. Yes, Leo, I do seminars all over the world, and usually they're about 3 hours long, and I do them all over the world. Whenever I travel to a city, I try to organize a seminar. So I will be in Saudi Arabia for UFC and in England for UFC. So I would love to schedule seminars for there in the future. Guys, call TriStar Gym, work hours, and tell them, hey, we heard Coach is coming to our city. Please give him our info. We want him to do a seminar, and we'll figure something out. As a beginner, what's better to specialize in your opinion? Boxing or kickboxing? I want to do 70% wrestling and 30% striking as a powerlifting guy. That's from Christopher Fran. There's no compromise. You got to do both. Okay. I highly recommend start with boxing, of course, because you got to be able to throw a good punch. Get a man's guide to throwing a punch. Get 50% off. Put the promo code on the bottom of your screen. You won't regret it. That's the best boxing video there is out there. The best. A real man's guide to how to throw a punch, how to box. I recently updated it. I've added an hour of how to hit the bag. Guys, make sure, for those of you who bought it in the past, make sure to go review how to hit the bag. If you bought it in the past, it's just a free upgrade. How to hit the bag, combinations on the bag. It's a really, really good segment. You're going to love it. Okay, here, technical difficulty. Thoughts on astrology? Did early Muslims believe? That's from Dedicated. I don't think so. I think it's haram. I think it's forbidden. I think astrology, predicting the future is completely haram. But was there any other type of astrology? I don't think so. Astronomy, yes. Astrology, no. Haram. How did Usman reach such high levels despite having horrible knees most his career? That's from DD. If I remember correctly, he told me he does a lot of VersaClimber. Okay, now I personally don't recommend VersaClimber. Actually, I have nothing against it. I just don't like it. I've done it. I just don't like it as an exercise. I just can't see myself doing that regularly. If you like it, I don't know how high you can get your heart rate up there. But he told me he was using VersaClimber. I don't know why he wouldn't use Airdyne. I think Airdyne is just funner and easier, and I think it spikes your heart rate. I've done some VersaClimber. I didn't feel like I can get my heart rate up there. But maybe I didn't stay on it long enough. But he's a VersaClimber guy. Whew. Excuse me, guys. It's getting late here in Montreal. Can you use turtle position for MMA? Question mark. Gracie seemed to not recommend. That's some Lubo. You better get the hell up. I always teach guys get up. Even in jiu-jitsu, I want them to get up. Guys, we had a Abu Dhabi Open in Montreal, and TriStar guys killed it. They won the most medals. They got the most points from all the teams. And I teach my guys, if you get in turtle, even the grapplers, not just the MMA guys, get up. Get up. And when they try to throw you down, that's when you Granby. That's when you flow into leg locks. That's when you Kimura. My number one thing is always get up, fight the hands, whizzer, back, wrap the guy up, get him to do a mat return. Okay, so if you're on top of a guy in turtle and the guy stands up and you throw him back down to the mat, that's called a mat return. I don't just Granby. When I'm turtle, I don't just Granby. Okay, so I get up off my knees. I have a really good turtle video, advanced basics. Later on, I'm going to get into ultimate turtle defense, which is going to have a lot more advanced techniques, scrambling techniques, but the advanced basics is a super powerful one. But I often teach getting up, scrambling. Why? Because I need you to throw me down to the mat before I roll. That's what gives me the powerful roll. Okay, so guys, I just released Ultimate K-Guard. Make sure to get Ultimate K-Guard. It is the strongest guard in all of Jiu-Jitsu. Excuse me. is my own personal opinion. I believe wrestling is much more important than jiu-jitsu, because what's the point of being good at jiu-jitsu if you can't take someone down? What's your opinion on anti-jiu-jitsu? That's from Christopher. Christopher, I totally agree. Like, I can't believe there's still jiu-jitsu schools out there that don't wrestle. It's insane. But look, if you're a good wrestler, you could lose to a jiu-jitsu guy. If you take him down, he could sub you. And the thing is, the reason why you don't see a lot of wrestlers get subbed in MMA is because of time limit. That's it. Because they take you down. They know they only have to survive 2 minutes. So you're gonna be very defensive. You're gonna hand fight. But if there's no time limit, you can't just be defensive and hand fight. It doesn't get you anywhere. So if you look at the old fights, grapplers versus wrestlers, the grapplers will win most of the time. That's why the Gracies weren't too crazy about takedowns. They didn't feel they needed it. At a time limit, and I know I only got to survive for 2 or 3 minutes, I'm going to behave in a way that just gives me an advantage, right? I'm going to kind of like ground and pound you and wait for the bell. I stole the round. Then you have a desperate grappler shooting in your legs all the time. It's just the sport has changed, and grapplers still have not adapted. I personally would never train in a school that doesn't teach takedowns. I just find it absurd. Imagine you 20 years of martial arts, 20 years. And you get into a street altercation and you're trying to drag the guy, you're grabbing the guy's shirt and try to drag him down to the floor, like sitting guard. That's just so embarrassing. I heard, one of my students was telling me there was a viral video on YouTube of a guy who kind of pulls guard and he's getting beaten up, and the guy pulling guard couldn't get his jiu-jitsu working, so he pulls out a gun and shoots the guy. I mean, I don't want to look that video up because I don't want to see somebody get shot here. I don't want to play it on my video, but I was like, really? I was shocked. So the guy couldn't use his jiu-jitsu. If the guy had wrestled, maybe he wouldn't have to shoot the guy. So it's insanity. And wrestling is just as, I mean, if you're drilling all these arm bars and like guillotines, why don't you just drill the takedowns? Why not? What's so hard about drilling takedowns? What philosophical ideas have you personally been pondering or writing about lately? That's from LR. Well, I'm going to write about determinism and proof of God. I'm going to do much what Chris Langland is doing, but in a different way. Okay? I feel like he's missed certain things. He's also developed certain things, which is great. But, proof of God, mysticism, and determinism, free will, all the key important topics. How did you build your game training part-time? That's from my missed. Oh, that's from Ricardo. Ricardo, I didn't train part-time. Okay, so I went to university. I was training twice a day, one short session in the morning at home. I would do like a bag routine, and then at night I would do grappling and then conditioning and stuff like that. So I did have a 2 a day, even though my morning session was very short because I had to go to school. But then I lowered to part-time students. That's why it took me so long to graduate. And after graduating, I went full-time into MMA. Okay, guys, weirdly, some thumb down logo appeared on my screen today. Now it appeared on the live section. You guys all saw that, right? So there's a lag between what I'm saying and what you guys are seeing. I don't know why I got a thumbs down on the screen. Hold on, I gotta look that up. That's really weird. Did I thumbs down it? Hold on a second. That's really weird. Oh, here it is. This is the strangest thing I've ever seen. I was doing a live stream today using OBS, going to Vimeo. I have a camera going into a Black Magic switcher, then into OBS using Mac. 4 times during the stream, an animated thumbs up and a thumbs down came on the screen window in OBS. That's exactly what I'm using. I'm using OBS. It went out to the live stream. Very inappropriate during a heartfelt speech at a funeral. Ouch. So this guy was giving a eulogy or a funeral eulogy, and this happened. I guess you all have upgraded to Mac OS Sonoma, where you can add live reactions to any camera stream using gestures. All you need to do is recite this. Oh my goodness. Okay, so it's a problem with OBS. Look at that. See that? I knew I wasn't going crazy because I saw it on my stream and then it feeds to your stream, and I just saw this giant thumbs down. I'll have to research it later and figure it out, because I was like, what the? I've never seen that before. Wow, the button pushers. See that? The button pushers got it wrong. They did some kind of error. There's some kind of error in this upgrade. I did an upgrade recently, and look at this. The button pushers, they're going to destroy the world one day. As a beginner, what's the better... Oh, I did that one. Excuse me. All right. How to get a stronger jaw, coach? That's from a waiter. That's a good question. I'm not sure how you can get a stronger jaw. I do a lot of neck training, but jaw training, I've seen that thing where you like the people chew on this rubber. Oh God, don't tell me I have to start chewing on a rubber. I don't know if you can make your jaw. I'm sure you can make your jaw stronger. I just don't. I'll be honest with you, I don't work the jaw, I work the neck. I think my name dedicated first fits. Just realized spent like 4 super chats to get my Q answered. Dedicated first. I'm happy you could laugh about it. I'm sorry for missing super chat, but you know me when I get on a rant. If Jordan Peterson came to TriStar, would you train him? That's from Hermanson. First, we'd have to have a talk about his incitement to violence. I would want to have a public discussion where he pulls that back and makes it right. If he can make it right, then we can train, yes. But I'm not over that. You know, he make a public incitement about attacking the Palestinians. I find that completely absurd. I'd want him to justify that with me. We know why people become extremists. We know. And I would point out to him throughout history what happened to rebel groups who were colonized. It's always the same, man. They fight tooth and nail. They want freedom. They're sick and tired of being subjugated. I think he's signed with The Wire, right? The Wire is run by Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro signs checks to our boy, your boy, not my boy anymore, but Jordan Peterson. Peterson is bending the knee. He's bending the knee. Okay? He's inciting violence. He knows why people behave this way. We know in psychology, we know if you starve, butcher, enslave people, that's how they behave. They have nothing to lose. There's nothing to lose. We know when somebody has 50% unemployment rate, the youth is 70% unemployment. And where can you get a job? Well, you got to go work for the guy who's colonizing you. You got to work. You got to scrub the toilets. You got to do all the jobs they don't want to do, and they're going to pay you a little fee and then go back to your little nest. Go back. It's degrading. No human being will live like this. Hey, coach, I have my first Muay Thai fight in 2 months. Camp starts on Monday. I weigh 167. I'm fighting at 147. Oh, my God. Any tips on cutting weight? How much should I lose before cutting water? Thanks. That's from Jad. Jad, there's too much to know, okay? I recommend get 3 weeks to Shredded by Mike Dolce. It's a great book. It's all the answers you need. I want you to read that whole book in one sitting. On Sunday, this next coming Sunday, you're going to sit down with 3 weeks to Shredded, and you're going to read the whole thing. It's not that hard, okay? It's not that long. It's not that hard. Skip the whole life story part. Just get to the nitty gritty. He shows you every example. It's a great book. He shows you how to cut weight, how to do it all. It's a phenomenal book. It's just too much for me to go over right now. The book is a great, great place to start. Coach, will you ever make a video for how to wrestling for dummy, like a wrestling tutorial for Zahabi, for those who have zero ground game knowledge? That's from Ojo. Check out my wrestling videos in my Advanced Basic series. I have Advanced Basic Wrestling, Advanced Underhook, and Advanced Basics Overhook. It's made for people who are starting off, but it's super nuanced and detailed. In the future, I'm going to have Ultimate Underhook, Ultimate Overhook, Ultimate Wrestling. It's all going to come out. The Ultimate Series is going to come out. Now, I came out with Ultimate K-Guard. Guys, for those of you who are more seasoned, check out Ultimate K-Guard. Even if you're a beginner, it's a great one to have in your collection. Favorite Seinfeld moment? That's from LR. Oof. I grew up watching Seinfeld. There's too many good ones. It was just such a brilliant comedy. I didn't like the way it ended. I wasn't crazy about the way it ended. The best Seinfeld episode, which one was it? I really have to think about this. What was the best Seinfeld episode? Man, there's just too many good ones. There was the one where George had shrinkage in the pool. The one with the soup Nazi was incredible. The one where Elaine's luck and George's luck switched. So George always had a horrible life. Elaine had a good life. And then all of a sudden she's having all the bad luck. He's having all the good luck. George is like on top of the world. He becomes a hand model. And then his life just tanks. And Seinfeld's like the guy in the middle who's like, I had a friend that was down. I had a friend that was down, a friend that was up. Now I have a friend that's down and the other friend is up. And he's like the karma. It was just brilliant writing. What other stellar episodes that they have that was quite brilliant? The one where they get lost in the parking lot was pretty funny. That was pretty classic. I think Soup Nazi was like the best one ever. Like everybody was saying Soup Nazi, Soup Nazi. It was such a brilliant episode. Was that the best episode ever? I'm not sure, man. But it's just too many good ones. I didn't like the later Seinfeld, the later seasons. It just got old. It's just like, it's too predictable. Hey, Coach, what's your philosophy on bad things happening to good people? Example, murder, sexual violence, as I've been struggling mentally with this fact. That's from Christopher. Well, Christopher, people tell me that, why do bad things happen to good people? That guy's a good person. Why did it happen? Kant goes into this quite deeply. In Kant's moral philosophy, he realizes, look, you can't have morality if God doesn't exist. And he realizes that morality exists. He's having a direct experience of morality. Again, a very Muslim thing. There's no doubt Kant. You have to understand, like, Kant was influenced by the Muslims. He had to be. There was a boom in Islamic world, and then in Europe, and then, not before. The boom happened in the Muslim world. Then you have a boom in the European world, and they're saying the same things. They're saying a lot of the same things as the Muslims. Kant was saying, look, if there's no God, there's no morality. I'm having a direct experience of morality. I feel morality is true. I'm having a direct experience that something's right and wrong. Science can't tell me that. It can't tell me what I'm feeling. Science cannot explain. Logic and science cannot bring me to this point. It's intuition. I'm having a direct experience. And then he says, wait a second. This is Kant, okay? Kant says, look, wait a second. I see bad things happening to good people. And he's like, well, there must be an afterlife. Why? Because if there's a God, we know there's a God because of morality. And if there's a God, he won't let it be uneven like this. He's going to allow justice. You can't be a God. A God can't be unjust. That'll be a contradiction. A God's supposed to be perfect in every way. So he goes, there has to be an afterlife. But he goes, also, I used to be dead. Now I'm alive. So that process is going to repeat itself because it happened one time, at least one time. We have perfect proof of that. We're alive. How do you know you're alive? Well, you're having an intuitive experience. Math and science can't prove you're alive, by the way. There's no perfect definition of life. It's a complicated thing, okay? But philosophers argue on what is actually alive. Now, life occurred. We can't deny it. We're having a direct experience. All these things. So he starts listing all these things he's having direct experience about. Muslims did it. Muslims were the first to do that. See, the Greeks didn't do that. The Greeks used what we would call science. Well, they didn't call it science, but they didn't have the scientific method as we have today, but they were empiricists and they used logic. The Muslims said, okay, logic and science is great. Okay, I'm using the term loosely now because that's not exactly how they used it. But what you would believe as to be science today, how you understand science and logic, the Arabs loved it, but they said, look, it's never perfect. These two will never give us perfection. What are we sure of? What are we so sure of we can't get wrong? It's impossible to be wrong. Well, one thing we know for sure is language. That's why I like Chris Langland's work that I was talking about earlier. Language is undeniable, because to argue against language, to doubt language, you'd have to use language. It's insane. Because that's why I would love to talk to Chris Langland. Because what's the first words in the Quran? The first words in the Quran is recite. Language. Recite. Or it could be also translated write or recite or express. So Langland is saying, look, expression is 100% proof. You can't be wrong about expression. Think about it. If you wanted to doubt expression, you'd have to, you guys are getting it now, you'd have to express yourself. So it's a self-defeating position to argue against expression. It's another hard-nosed truth. We can't deny it. That's why I would love to applaud Chris Langland. I would love to applaud him. You get it. He gets it. You can't get that wrong. It's impossible that language doesn't exist. It's impossible that we're wrong about language. Now, what we say can be wrong, but not language itself. Okay. What else? Well, we can't be wrong about life. Life exists. We're alive. We can't be wrong about morality because we're having an experience of morality. I think it's evil to kill people. It's not a question of logic. I'm having this direct experience. So Kant is like, wow. Okay. I understand. And by the way, Kant definitely knew a lot about Islam. Okay. Definitely. When he wrote his thesis, in his own handwriting, he wrote on the thesis. Look this up. I'm not crazy. I'm not making this up. You can Google it. You'll find a picture of his thesis, his PhD. He writes, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. In his own handwriting. Those are the first words of the Quran. Mind blow, I know. Mind blow. Why is he quoting the first words of the Quran on his thesis? He never explains it in his works. I think it's an homage to the Arabs, to the Muslims, to the Quran. He's saying, thank you for explaining me this. That's what I think he's saying. He put it on his PhD. He's giving an homage to the Muslims because they must have had he must have had a translation of the Quran. But the Quran, you have to have somebody explain it to you. Okay? Because the way the Quran is taught traditionally is one master teaches it to a student and he learned it from his master, and so on, and so on, and so on. There's a chain of transmission of masters and student, master and student. And he must have had somebody explain it to him. Because he has so many parallels. The arguments he gives for the afterlife is exactly the Quranic arguments. The Quran says, you were born once, you were not alive, I brought you into creation, God's going to bring you again into creation. What happened in the past is going to happen again in the future. It's going to repeat. It's a cycle. It's fascinating stuff. So how does Kant explain it? He says, look, God is going to make things right in the afterlife. Everything that you see now is just going to be repaired later. Guys, that's the argument. I personally believe it. I agree with him. There's morality. We can't deny it. There's an afterlife. Well, we were born this time. Why should this be the only occurrence? That makes no sense. The universe is far beyond what we can comprehend. We came from death once. We'll do it again. It'll happen again. You put all these two together, you realize there's meaning to life. How could I be talking right now if it's just blind forces that brought me to be? Look, guys, the theory of blind forces is impossible. I'm going to say something super heavy out there. I don't think a lot of people are going to accept it closely, but it's true. What I'm about to say is very true. Okay, but let's see if you guys can juggle these two ideas. It's not randomness and then design is emergence. So the way the current scientific paradigm is that, look, there's random forces that brought this world to be by fluke, by luck, or a cosmic sneeze. And design is emergence. What's emergence? something you're projecting. You're projecting out of your head onto the world. So, for instance, you see a rocky formation. You're like, oh, look, that's a face. Look, God carved his face into this mountainside. And they're going to be like, no, that's just a big giant fluke because rocks are going to form in a certain way and we have an instinct to see faces, right? Because if you see faces, if you can read faces, the people who could read faces passed down their genes, because the people who couldn't, they couldn't tell what you were thinking, if you're angry, if you're happy, so they couldn't be successful in the community. They couldn't read the room, so they would be less successful. They would pass off their genes less and less, and then they were eventually weeded out of the gene pool. That's how they're always going to explain it that way. Okay, there's a lot of criticisms of these type of explanations. Believe me, it's not purely logical. Believe me, if I put on my philosopher cap, I could bring me an evolutionary biologist. I'll have him twisting him the winds. Okay, I think there are certain things about evolution that are true, but there are certain things that are philosophically highly incorrect. A discussion for another day. They have it backwards. It's not random forces and then design is emergence. It's design first, and then randomness is the emergence. I remember when I went on Joe Rogan, I talked about how randomness is an illusion of the mind. It's a projection of the mind. And the whole internet went berserk. And I still stand by it, and nobody has ever been able to refute me. And it's just not just me. Many great thinkers say this, including Pierre-Simon Laplace, arguably one of the greatest thinkers of all time. It's sad that people don't know more about Pierre-Simon Laplace because he came 100 years after Newton, and Newton was all the rage till today. Okay, so he was just outshined by a thinker that was as good or greater than him. But I'm telling you, Pierre-Simon Laplace, he's known as the French Newton. He's like Newton number 2, but just Newton's ideas kind of like went mainstream. There are no random events in the universe. Randomness is a projection of the mind. The world has it backwards. Like the scientific community used to think that the sun revolves around the earth. Now we flip it. Now we scoff at that. In the future, the scientific community is going to come to realize that randomness is impossible. If you believe in randomness, you're actually spitting in the face of science. I would love one day to have a PhD physicist on this channel. We can have a discussion. Guys, every time you say randomness, you know what you're saying to Newton? You're spitting in Newton's face. You're saying that science is not true. You can't have science and randomness. It's impossible. They're mutually exclusive. That's why, I remember one time hearing Sam Harris talking about determinism on Rogan's channel, and he doesn't get it because he thinks, oh, you're still going to have random events. Wrong. He gets it wrong. Now, I'm going to quote you because I know a lot of you are freaking out over this. I'm going to quote you Sean Carroll. You see, Sean Carroll, he gets it. He gets it that you can't have randomness and determinism. That's why he wrote a book, a very good book, interesting book, called Something Deeply Hidden. He's saying, guys, that whole randomness, that quantum flux, it's just an illusion. If you look really deeply, it's not both spinning clockwise and counterclockwise at the same time. It's not both here and there superposition. He's like, that's crazy. Because if that were true, kiss science goodbye. Science is based on the axiom, like I said on Rogan many years ago, that the future will behave like the past. You cannot have superposition. You cannot. Okay, so you have to have determinism. Now, determinism at the quantum level is a minor opinion today. It's a minority opinion. It's called superdeterminism. However, Sean Carroll explains this by saying that, look, physicists are really bad at philosophy. They're very bad at philosophy. Now, don't forget, he's a physicist and a philosopher. And he's a brilliant mind. Don't you, anybody out there dare dismiss him. Okay, he's a brilliant mind. He's at the forefront of science. Nobody out there dare dismiss this man. None of you dare. I'll tell you something. I don't agree with everything he says philosophically. However, he's a brilliant human being. And he believes that the reason why the scientific community has been subdued by this whole superposition stuff, this quantum craziness. He says it's because they don't think about it that deeply. He says they gave up. He says they shouldn't give up. They only care. He's talking about, he's making a blanket statement now. He's saying the scientific community only cares about what works, results. They don't care about the actual truth of the matter. They say if you run this formula, if you use this method, you'll get the results and they're accurate. Perfect. That's all they care about. We don't care what's happening in the wave function. We don't care if it's really spinning clockwise and counterclockwise at the same time. We don't care if it can defy logic. We don't care about that. We only care, does it work? Is it pragmatic? And he says that's a big mistake, but that's the dominant attitude in the scientific community today. And he says basically that scientists are talking out of their ass when they say that science is random and true random. He's basically saying, look, these guys are horrible philosophers. They just don't know anything about philosophy. They don't understand that it can't be such. They just care that it works. Schrodinger, when he made his famous Schrodinger's cat box experiment, he was trying to show the absurdity of a cat being both alive and dead. It can't be both alive and dead. We think about it as alive and dead because there's a 50% chance it's alive, 50% chance it's dead. It's a question mark. It's not literally both alive and dead. But people, for some reason, took it to be, oh, look, even Schrodinger is telling us that it's both alive and dead at the same time. No, it's not. The cat's either alive or dead. Okay, for those of you who've never heard the Schrodinger's cat thought experiment, he's basically saying, look, if you have an atom that decays, if it decays, it releases a vial of poison. If it doesn't decay, it doesn't relieve a vial of poison. There's a 50% chance that it decays. So you can't know if once that poison is released, the cat is subject to that poison and therefore dies. Now he says you don't know if the poison is released. So you'll only know when you open the box. When you open the box and you observe the cat, now you'll know for sure. He's saying before you open the box, you have to assume it's dead or alive. But he says not dead or alive. He actually says dead and alive. That's ridiculous. It's dead or alive. Guys, I studied propositional logic. It's not dead and alive. It's dead or alive. He's completely wrong here. He's completely wrong. He's stepping in the arena of logic. Schrodinger is a brilliant human being. And I think he was doing it to show the absurdity. There's a difference between dead and alive and dead or alive. The correct answer is dead or alive. This is basic propositional logic. A cat can't be both dead and alive. What is it, a zombie cat? Absurdity. People took it literally. It's insane how these things just spread like wildfire. And guys like Sean Carroll are telling you, he's telling you, look, it's wrong. We shouldn't say it's both dead and alive, both spinning clockwise and counterclockwise. We're thinking of it as such. And when we observe it, we can have a... now we can know whether it's spinning clockwise or counterclockwise, but it's not literally defying the laws of physics. Guys, make sure to pick up Sean Carroll's Something Deeply Hidden. I highly, highly recommend it. At 18 years old, guys, please no more super chats because I'm going to call it a day very shortly. At 18 years old, as a hockey and basketball athlete, my whole life to do, I have athletic potential to become a wrestling specialist in MMA. Have tips? That's from Christopher. Christopher, train for 30 days. If you love MMA, go all in. If you're a great athlete, but do 30-day trial. See if you could train 30 days in a row. Boxing, it's not for everybody. Can you fall in love with it? It's a lot of training. I mean, how much do you love it? You got to find out. Hey, coach, how can we improve cognitive mental decision during sparring? ? I would like to improve my mental decision-making skills within the fight. That's from Nailin J. I'll give you a really good answer to this. Watch a lot of fights. Like over the years, I've watched so many fights. And you start to have a library of fights. And then when you're in a certain situation, you're like, wait a second. I remember this guy who was in a similar situation to me. And he did this and it worked. So I watch a lot of fighting. Every day I watch wrestling, boxing, jiu-jitsu. I'm in the gym all day long. So, I mean, like I watch scenarios all day long. And you develop this library that's a reference now. So I would tell you, you got to watch a lot of fighting. And over time, you're going to start to develop this library of possibilities. Okay, guys, I'm about to wrap this up. Please, no more soup chat. Laplace's entry in the book Men of Mathematics is great. As a mathematical physicist, the question of probability, distribution models, and computability, randomness, and such is about language/logic. That's from Juan. You're right. It's an expression. It's not meant literally. Randomness is not meant literally in Laplace's models. But over time, people took randomness to be a literal force out there, which cannot be the case. Coach, I am coming to Montreal in June just to start training in TriStar Gym. Are you the head coach? ? How long will it take for me to start competing professionally as a beginner in the 20s? That's from Shihab. Shihab, when you walk in the TriStar Gym, I will be there. I'm there twice a day. You come and shake my hand. And you say, I'm Shihab the Great from YouTube. Then I will escort you inside the octagon. I have a 30-foot life-size octagon, UFC octagon. And me and you will do battle. And after the battle, I will tell you my honest opinion of how far you can go. All right? Don't worry, Mr. Shihab the Great. I will not injure you. We'll have a good little roll, little sparring session. We'll mix it up. We'll have fun. It'll be a fun experience. Nobody will get hurt. But I will give you a fair assessment. Why you disregard holy fire on Easter? That's from Todd. Todd, I have no idea what you're talking about. Coach, thoughts on the 4 wives of strength? The 4 wives of strength. That's from Weitmast. What's 4 wives of strength? Hold on, let me look that up. I feel like I should know this. 4 wives of strength. The 4 wives of strength. Is that a thing? Strongest man of Egypt marries 4 wives. Okay. Okay, buddy. No. Did I misread you? Hold on a second. Where is this again? Coach, when are you making strong and stable family? ? That's from Terrence Peterson. I'm going to call that video Mission Impossible for you, for your generation. I feel very bad for your generation. Coach, thoughts on the 4 wives of strength? I'm sorry, buddy. I don't understand what you're saying. Back in strong and stable marriage, guys, I got to tell you something. I love these viral clips. Dude, there's this guy, Michael Knowles. They bring him on the channel. I forget what it's called, the channel, but he's sitting with, he's like this deeply religious conservative guy. He's very famous on the internet, okay? He's sitting with these OnlyFans girls. And I find it fascinating. As a sociologist, I find it fascinating. Because he's seeing, like, he's a conservative, but he lives in a liberal country, okay? He has all this freedom of this, freedom of that, feminism. They preach this to the world, liberalism. They preach liberalism to the world. You can be a conservative liberal, okay? But he lives liberal values. And he's sitting on the table with these girls who are doing OnlyFans. And it's like, you see, now do you understand, Mr. Michael Knowles? And he's trying to explain to them Christianity. And you should hear this discussion. My God. It's an impossible discussion. Why? Because you have this guy who's conservative. He believes in Jesus. He believes Jesus is Lord and Savior. He believes the Bible's been preserved. It's inerrant. And he's trying to explain to these OnlyFans girls, stop prostituting yourself on the internet. Come back to the Christianity. Come back to being conservative. Cover your skin. Hide your boobs. Take off this makeup. Stop selling pictures of your feet and your ass and your vagina, and stop putting dildos into your mouth. Stop having men masturbate all over you. Stop. We can't marry you now. We can't have you as a wife. We can't have kids with you. And these girls are like, well, I don't want to have kids. I don't want to be your wife. I have my own money. I don't need you. And you could see that Michael Knowles, this guy, is a very intelligent guy, super intelligent guy. He's dying inside. You could see. He's dying inside. Why is he dying inside? Because He's finally coming to reason. He's coming to understand. Liberalism has a major obstacle. And I'm trying to be nice here. It has a fatal flaw. What's your fatal flaw? What does liberalism hurt us? Liberalism is a great divider. Guys, I'm just going to quickly define liberalism just so I don't lose any casual listeners, okay? Liberalism, in a nutshell, is do what makes you happy, just don't harm anybody, okay? There's a lot more to liberalism. It has to do with economics, politics. It goes in every range of life. Everything you have to do, it has to do with your life. Liberalism has a comment. Now, I've studied John Locke for many, many years. I'm very familiar with liberalism, but I'm telling you, it boils down to this. Pursue happiness. Pursue your happiness. Just don't harm anybody. Just don't harm anybody. Go ahead. If you could do anything you want, just don't harm anybody. So he's trying to tell them, look, you girls are... He's trying to tell them, look, you girls are slutty. You girls are disgusting. He's trying to tell them this in a nice way. You girls are degrading yourselves. I'm giving you to plain text. He's not saying these words. He's saying, look, you're harming yourself. It's not good for society. He's trying to, but ultimately in his heart of hearts, he's like, man, these girls, man. But what he doesn't understand is we told you that was going to happen. The whole world, all these great thinkers of the past were telling guys, liberalism is a dangerous thing because your children are going to think completely opposite of one another. So they're going to have nothing in common. Our future generations are going to have nothing in common with each other. Liberalism is a massive divider. Your wife is going to think one way and the husband's going to think another way and your son's going to think this other crazy way and your daughter's going to think he's going to have a completely different pursuit. There's no unification. Guys, they poll people all over the world. The most unified group in the world is the Muslims. And guys, this is crazy because the Globe and Mail is reporting this. Globe and Mail hates Islam. And they're saying, look, the number one group with the most unification and the biggest life satisfaction, not happiness, satisfaction, is the Muslim group. The last is the atheist group. It's fascinating. The polls are fascinating. But he's trying to tell this girl, look, come back to Christianity. And she's like, no. I think I could just pray to God any which way I want, and God cares about me. He doesn't care about what I do. He doesn't care that I prostitute myself on the internet. I can do all sorts of sex acts. It's not a sin. And he's like, oh, he's being really calm. But you could tell the guy is dying inside. He's a relic. His religion now is a relic. He's trying to tell them about the apostolic fathers, the church fathers, the apostolic train and transmission, how the Catholic Church canonized the Bible. He's trying to explain them all these things, and they just dismiss him like this. They're not interested in his whole tradition of St. Peter, and they have none of it. They won't even entertain it. She's like, oh, I read the Bible myself and I see it this way. She goes, that's your opinion. That's your opinion. That's your opinion. That's what liberalism is. You have your opinion. I have my opinion. I'm not harming you with my opinion. They're not interested in being united with you. They're in the pursuit of their own happiness. If you pursue your happiness and I pursue my happiness, and that takes us down different roads, well, that's what you taught me. You taught me to pursue my happiness. Now, in liberalism, it's happiness, your personal happiness, and number two is don't harm anybody else. In Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, it's God first, okay? Somebody told me, oh, you say God first, but what about the prophets second? No, of course, that includes the prophets, that includes the scripture, that includes the whole thing, religion, okay, and all of it. There's religion first, God first, and then second is family. Then happiness will be a byproduct. That's how we organize our lives, okay? Now, the Muslim world's family unit is very strong. It's the strongest in the world. But we prioritize things that way. How many times have I came on this podcast and told you guys the wonders of being married, having kids, stay away from these bad things that are going to destroy your family? How many times? And I'm not just talking to the Muslims, I'm talking to everybody. Because I think ultimately it will give you the most life satisfaction. How many times have I done this? How many times on this podcast have I talked about the importance of getting married? Marriage, be successful. marriage is success. It'll make you successful. Not talking about money. It's gonna make you happy. In liberalism, they don't talk to you about marriage. Marriage isn't. You know how many articles come out every week? There's always a viral video about women talking about how they don't want to have kids. Women talking about how they don't want to have kids. Women, I don't want to have kids. I don't want to have kids. I don't want to have kids. Let me tell you something about women. Guys, I want you to open your ears. I'm gonna big brother you here for a second, okay? Nobody get offended, okay? Do not get offended. I don't care how Generation Z you are. Do not get offended. I'm not trying to insult you. I'm trying to help you. When a woman is in love with you, she wants to have your baby. That's a hard truth, a hard fact. A hard fact. If a woman is in love with you, like if you're in her skin, like this girl's obsessed with you, she loves you. She'll never tell you, oh, I don't want to have kids. She'll never tell you this. She's going to grab you, she's going to kiss you on the lips, she's going to tell you, put a baby inside me. That's what she's going to tell you. If a woman is drunk off you, she loves you, she wants you so bad, not having your baby is a pain to her. That's a torment. She can't think that, oh, this guy's going to have a baby with someone else other than me. That's how she should be. Now, in the West, we've completely desensitized her. We've pushed them in a direction that they, to our face, tells us they don't want to have our kids. Publicly, they publicly tell us, oh, we don't want to have your kids. We don't want to continue Western civilization. We don't want to continue. Because you taught them at a young age, pursue happiness, don't hurt anybody else. So now they're pursuing their own personal happiness. And guess what? They're selfish as selfish can be. And guess what? You made this monster. You made it. Western civilization. You made it. You told us, oh, no, don't go in this direction. Muslims are like, no, family first. Did you guys ever notice that all the Islamic laws, all of them, guys, I'm telling you this as a philosopher, not as a theologian. I'm not a theologian. I'm a philosopher. Okay, I'm a philosopher of theology. It's totally different than being I'm a philosopher of religion, not a theologian. Two very different things, very light years away. Okay, I'm telling you, Islam's rules and Christianity's rules were all, and Judaism as well, were all umbrellas to protect family. That's it. Like, there's more to it than that, but all the laws. Think about it. You can't gamble. How many families have been destroyed by gambling? There are too many. They're in the trillions, billions. Okay, billions. No alcohol. How many families have been destroyed by alcohol? Countless. Just the number is impossible to compute. All the laws were made to preserve family. Why should women dress modestly? Well, she shouldn't be so comfortable showing her body to strange men. What happens when women are comfortable showing their bodies to strange men? You are going to have a lot more competition out there. You're going to have this girl, she's going to have slept with 20, 30 guys. You think that's going to help you raise a family with this woman? Now she's got some old boyfriend somewhere that when he texts her, he pulls on her heartstrings. She's reminiscing about a time where she went on this trip with some dude and you're trying to raise a family with her. You guys are putting a lot of obstacles in the way between you and a successful family. She had all her firsts with this guy. Now you're going to marry her when she's late in her 30s. Like, the way they groomed you to romance you into letting them come here and sleep with all your women. Foreigners come here and they sleep with all their West. Like, it's a party house. It's a place to party. Foreign men come here to party, and then they go marry some girl from their hometown, back home to where they came from. It's a really bad strategy. It's, in my opinion, grooming. They groomed you when you were young. They groom women to be sex objects. Like, basically, we've become hedonists in the West. Like, it's all about sex. Oh, sex. I'm so enamored about sex. I gotta see nonstop sexual images. If my Instagram feed is not sex 24 hours a day, I'm following the wrong people. Like, it's an insane amount of sex. You've completely destroyed women in the society. Like, this girl is sitting there, she's talking to this intellectual conservative, and he can't convince her that wearing her cross while she's doing porn and that she shouldn't have her pictures of her ass on the internet, it's not good for her. It's going to bite her in the ass down the line, and she's completely dismissing him. There's a huge disconnect from his generation and her generation. As a sociologist, as a philosopher, I got to tell you, I find it fascinating. I wonder where this liberal experiment is gonna go. I'm still watching. I'm watching. I'm watching. I'm waiting. What happens to these kids in the future? I think most of them are gonna be miserable and alone. Okay, guys, no more super chats. Just regular chats. Okay, guys, please, because I don't know when I'm gonna cut this. What? One super chat. I don't even know what the super chat is trying to say. Okay. All right, guys. Give me comments and questions on my latest rant. Can you comment on the Paul Harvey talk? If I was the devil, they brought it up on Rogan. I have no idea what that is. Hopefully it's not long. I can look it up. If it is long, I'll have to do it another time. If I was the devil. Okay, Joe Rogan's mind blown. If I was the devil.
Rogan plays a Bible prophecy from 1965 about the devil.
And I've heard the bad mouth thing. We played it like 5 times at least.
It'll blow your mind when you hear this.
It's not good, but it also gives us a chance to right the ship. It hasn't hit the rocks yet. Like, we can still come out of this.
The devil.
Let me find a better version. Paul Harvey.
If I were the devil.
Is this the thing? Yeah.
Okay. If I were the devil. If I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness. And I'd have 1/3 of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree. Thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve. Do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince...
Hold on a second. I got to put this on screen. Was John Locke Satan? Hey, man. Could be. Hold on a second. Oh, oops. Almost cut my own feed. My button pushing skills. When will they ever be sharp? Okay, window capture. Whew, man. All right, let's get this on screen. This is actually pretty interesting. I want to make sure you guys read this. Okay, here we go. Okay, same problem as earlier. All right. Hold on one second, gentlemen. You heathenists. I don't know why I call you heathenists, gentlemen. Something gentle about you. All right. Here we go. So, if I were the devil, this is what I would do, he says.
That man created God and...
Basically, everything that's happening today, that's what he would do. All right. If I were the devil. Here we go.
I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. Wow. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door.
Holy shit.
Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who want it until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing.
What can I say? That was brilliant. Well done, well said. And that was in 1965. Wow. Very interesting. I wonder if that's authentic, but I'll take your word for it. What can we say, guys? Welcome to liberalism. John Locke, go dig up his grave. Go ahead, get your shovels and go dig up his grave. What can I say? He set you on a path of no return, in my opinion. He's pulled the pin. He's launched a grenade. I don't know if there's a point of return from here, because the women have run amok. They're telling us, hey, they want to wear their crosses while they do pornography. I mean, how much more can they spit in your face? How much more? Like, where does it end? What's the next level? Are Muslims ever going to see a woman saying, oh, we want to, I can't even say it. See, I can't even make the parallel because it hurts too much. Like, it's just, that would be insane. I think men, you got liberalism forced down your throat at a young age. They groomed you, and this is what it was for. So they would destroy. Ultimately, they tried to make us selfish human beings, totally self-centered. And what happens when you're totally self-centered? When me is the most important person in the world, you paint yourself in the corner, you're living on an island. It's a miserable experience. Because if everybody puts themselves as first, what does that leave us? Just leaves us. There's no human connection. And I'll tell you something. Since the advent of social media, don't ask me, ask psychologists. There has been a boom, an explosion in narcissism. Explosion. Psychologists have seen an explosion in the last 20 years because of social media. An explosion. Everybody's all about me. Guys, let me tell you something, okay? I was born before selfies were a thing. People didn't have cameras on them, and selfies weren't a thing. When we had cameras, you'd have to wind it. You have to go snap, snap, okay? And then you go get it developed. Nobody was taking pictures of themselves. Nobody. It didn't exist. We'd have to find somebody. Hey, can you take a group photo? Selfies didn't exist. And then some guy invented the selfie stick. I found that ridiculous. I'm like, that's the stupidest thing. How many pictures of yourself would you need? Why isn't your arm enough? Well, you can't get the view right. The guy made a millionaire. I missed the boat. I thought, hey, this guy's not going to make money. He's so dumb. Who's going to want a selfie stick? Boy, was I wrong. He was right. I was wrong. I'm the done one. The selfie stick guy's a genius. Now there's a guy even higher than him. He made the selfie stick with a curve so you could take pictures of your booty. You could selfie your booty. I found that even stupider. Who the hell is going to buy a booty selfie stick? Boom, the guy's a millionaire. I'm the dumb one. He's the smart one. I didn't think human beings would want a selfie stick, much less a curved selfie stick for your booty. Guess what? That guy's a gazillionaire today, and I'm still here. You know, I saw this happen before my eyes. The world has become crazy selfish. What can I tell you guys? It's insanity to me. Coach, what is the significance of Alice in Wonderland, and when are you realizing your philosophy book? That's from Rambo. Rambo, it's going to be a while before I do. I'm still taking notes, putting ideas down. It's going to take me years. I'm going to be an old man, I think, by the time I do my first philosophy book. I'm still refining them. But I hope it's going to be colossal, my book, inshallah. Alice in Wonderland is a phenomenal book. It's quite a trip. There's endless amount of like craziness in that book. Now, don't forget the author was in love with a girl named Alice. She was a minor. So there was that touchy subject. However, the book is quite brilliant itself. I'd have to reread it before I jump into it. Honestly, I haven't read it in forever. Okay, I gotta put a guy in timeout. Should I just ban him for life? Guys, should I ban him for life or just put him in timeout? All right, I'll put him in timeout because I want to be nice. Let's do a 24-hour timeout. For us, I will ankle pick you. That's from Jay Zark. Well, you're welcome to try, Mr. Jago. Coach, what is the significance? Oh, I did that one. What? So many trolls. A $50 super chat. Goodness gracious. You're a gentleman, a scholar. Thank you. When is your next big video with blogging theology or Muhammad Hijab or something regarding Islam and philosophy? I've watched every one you've done, and it's changed my life and brought me closer to Allah. I sent this as you said, no more. I sent this as you said, no more BTW, my bad. Jazakallahu khair. Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that, Mr. True Red Crime. My podcasts are not really scheduled that strictly. I barely have time to do my own podcast. So I hope when I'm in England, we'll do it together, maybe in person. So when's the next UFC in England? That's when it should be, roughly about there. Coach, how would you balance MMA training while also prepping for running a marathon? That's from Ali. Ali, I wouldn't prep for running a marathon. I don't think it's healthy for you. I really don't recommend long ultra this running. If you're doing it for fun or an adventure or as like a kick, it's just like a fun thing to do, go for it. But I wouldn't simultaneously train for MMA and a marathon. Absolutely not. One of them is a power sport. One of them is an ultra endurance sport. In my opinion, do one or the other. Don't do them both at the same time. You're going to injure yourself. And like St. Pierre says, he says, I'd rather smoke a cigarette than run a marathon. The cigarette is much healthier than running a marathon. I agree with him. I think smoking one cigarette will do a lot less to your harm than running a marathon. Okay, guys, I'm going to wind this down. We're at 2 hours and 49 minutes. Okay, guys, it's time to call it a day. Let's do one last short one. Something fun. I always like to end it on something fun. Thoughts on the Haney-Garcia fight? Guys, what a great question. I saw the highlights only. I couldn't find the full fight. What can I say, man? What can I say? I thought Haney was going to win. I thought Haney's defense was just going to... And he was winning a majority of the rounds, and he got knocked down. I have to watch the whole thing because in the highlights, they show the scorecard, and it was like Garcia wins round 1 because he hurt Haney, dropped him. Then he like loses like 4 rounds, 5 rounds in a row, and then drops him again 2 more times. Points wise, I want to see, does it add up that Garcia won? I'm sure it did, because I didn't hear many complaints. I didn't hear any complaints that people said it was a robbery or anything. At least I don't remember I did. However, I'm really looking forward to watching that fight as a judge, like just like kind of seeing like did he pull it off? Because that's a huge win for Ryan Garcia. I'm very happy for him. Very, very happy. I mean, that's a massive win, because Devin Haney is a killer, and so is Ryan Garcia. But I just thought Haney's defense was just too tight. Guys, thank you for tuning in. Like, share, comment, and I will see you all in the next episode. Thank you.